Hello. So I'm Sage, the planning director. Just here to give a brief intro. So first off, thank you everybody for coming and continuing to work on this project on the CAC. Just first off, you do have a number of desk items. Most were emailed to you ahead of time as they were received. I just want to note there were two additional desk items that came in after 5 o'clock today. And those have been provided for you, and they're all in front of you. And so, just want to note that, why we're here tonight, and we're getting close to the midway of this process, and it's important that the town provides an update to the town council. So we've had two, I think, well attended and a lot of input at the last two CAC meetings. And from that, there have been some, very general design concepts prepared in response to some of the feedback that we received. Before we presented that information to the council, we wanted to make sure the CAC members had a chance to look at it and provide some recommendations. So that was the main purpose of this extra meeting, this extra CAC meeting tonight. And then so we will be going to the town council at their next meeting on next Tuesday. And then just a reminder for everyone, the town center area plan, it's a long-range planning document that is focused on a particular area in town. It is a policy document. So, at the end of this process, there will be policies that will guide the town, set priorities for different action items for the town to pursue. That policy document is not something that will implement any specific idea to the fine granular detail. So what you have before you tonight are just general design concepts of things that the town may consider in some kind of abstract form. And if ultimately adopted by the town council, different policies to pursue some different options. And in the future, any options that the town council pursue or any policies that direct the town to pursue different options will still have input on those granular details. Everything that you have before you tonight, again, is just kind of concept visions to look at and provide some feedback on. So just remember, we're not voting or deciding if this actual design is going to be implemented or not, but looking at it more of a holistic kind of policy concept review. So I just want to reiterate that. But with that, again, thank you all for coming, and I'll turn it over to Good City Company, who has been assisting us with this process.
All right. Thanks, Sage. Thanks for the welcome. Good to see everyone again. We really appreciate you all taking time to be a part of this process. As Sage pointed out, we had a couple of really successful, productive, respectful meetings so far. So we want to keep building on that momentum. Next slide. So for tonight, the agenda, we had the welcome and the opening from Sage and myself. Then I'll jump into a quick refresher on the project, what we've done so far, where we're going next, and what we want to get out of this effort. Then for the lion's share of the meeting, we're going to focus on transportation ideas. Like Sage said, we have a couple of ideas. You guys had some really good feedback in December. We heard that feedback. And we developed some concepts that we'd love to kind of just chat about with you all to refine them, and then to give you just the chance to take a stab at them before we go to council next week. So we're really going to focus on those concepts for most of the meeting. Then we'll briefly at the end kind of leave a little bit of a time to touch base about housing. Really important topic. We talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, but we'd like to come back to it again at the end of this meeting. Then we'll have public comment, and I'll sort of talk about where we're going next after this meeting, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll hopefully get out of here earlier than last time. Next slide. Okay, so here we are kind of in our timeline. The big giant star there is our meeting tonight. We had already, like we mentioned 2 meetings. We had one last July and we had one in December. And we were originally going to go straight ahead to town council and kind of present, what we've talked about with this group. But we figured since we had sort of the time and space to talk with you before we went to council, we're going to go ahead and add tonight's meeting to give you the opportunity to share the input with us that then we can then carry forward to council. And then what we'll be doing after that is we'll launch into kind of a fuller phase of community engagement like we did last time. We'll have a survey, some pop-ups, open house workshop, and then we'll be back with the CAC again to kind of take stock of what we heard from the public in that last meeting, and then to kind of keep refining the ideas and the policies, as Sage said, as we kind of move forward towards a more refined policy effort, and then we'll go into environmental review. Next slide. So at the last meeting, we kind of talked through a list of, we call them outcomes, you call them objectives or guiding principles, but this is kind of what we as a town want to get out of this effort. So we ran through this list last time. We had a couple of good ideas from the group here about edits to this list. We made most of those edits, and so we just wanted to kind of put this up again, just to reflect your feedback and to give you one more chance just to kind of weigh in on this. I think we're generally in agreement on this, but I'll stop just for a moment if anyone has any kind of clarifying questions or comments on these outcomes that we're all working towards. Richard? Sure.
Is that environmental review countenancing some sort of CEQA process? Mitigated no deck, EIR, limited EIR. What is that?
Yeah, it'll be a CEQA process, the exact nature of which I think it'll depend upon the alternatives that we study for the town center, how much housing we look at. Most likely it'll be a regular CEQA process where we go through, the different topic areas to some degree. I think there'll be some amount that we can tier off of the work done for the housing element. But I think we'll talk about that more at our next meeting. We'll come with a very, I think, more clear approach about CEQA, but it does depend a bit on where we go with how much housing we look at in the plan area.
And Troy, I'll just, for everyone, just to remind everyone to please make sure you speak closely into the microphones. One for the folks in the room, but most importantly for the folks that are joining us on Zoom, the only way they're going to hear you is if you actually speak really closely into the microphones. So thanks.
Yeah, good point, Sage. Daniel?
So I have one topic that I feel like is a little bit of miss for this list that I just wanted to put in front of the group. I attended one of the council meetings in January, and an organization called LAFCO, which is an arm of San Mateo County that audits the health of the town cities, presented to us on kind of what's the health of Woodside. On the financial side of things, so our budget is about $12.5 million a year. 51% of our budget comes from property taxes, which is really unusual in the county. That's normally 15 or 20%. There's not a lot we can do about it, right? That revenue source. Our next biggest revenue source is permitting and fees. We have very little sales tax, very little business taxes, no hotel tax that most of the other towns make a lot of money on. And so why do I bring this up? Well, our police services cost $3 million a year, and they're projected to grow way faster than our town revenue. And LAFCO in this meeting raised an alarm that said by 2030, we may be looking at $1 million shortfall in our budget, which is kind of where Portola Valley is, right? Where they're in financial trouble. So the question I had that comes out of that is, should one of our desired outcomes or goals for the town center project be to try to focus on having the town center generate revenue for the town as a priority? Is that a way to close that gap that's inevitably coming if it's not just the next 4 years, it's certainly in the scope of this project. So that's something I wanted to put on the table is, do we need a number 12, which is one of our goals needs to be to design the town center as a revenue generator for the town as fitting with the rest of our principles, but really think about, because I don't know where else we can go find revenue in the town of Woodside if we have that shortfall. So that's what I wanted to put on the table.
That's great. Great idea. Why don't we take that down? And I don't see any reason why not to add that there, unless we have any other ideas about that thought or any others on the outcomes list.
Number 11 is, the end of it doesn't make complete sense to me. Offer more flexibility to landowners and explore allowing residential.
Development uses, maybe we should.
In commercial spaces, is that what you mean?
Well, I think that's the crux of this process, is exactly to what degree do we allow
Yeah.
residential? So it's kind of hard for, I think, for us to nail down the outcome of that discussion. So I was
Yeah.
kind of, we're leaving that a little bit open-ended there,
Yeah,
but
that one seemed a
a
little
little
like,
open.
yeah, like everything else seemed pretty clear, but that one was just so vague. And if that's our whole process, I'm not sure exactly what that one's doing.
Sure. Richard?
So quick comment, in other cities and municipalities, residential typically is a cost. It is not a revenue generator. So in light of the comment made here and the add of 12, I think there's an impact on 11.
Yeah, there could be, I think, some trade-offs there that we'll have to think about. Ersan?
I mean, to me, these are all goals, or sorry, not even goals, they're opportunities. It says explore allowing residential. Doesn't say force it, doesn't say you have to do it, doesn't say anything. There's no mandate. It says explore it. That's all it says. So I don't think they're actually in conflict at all, because we can encourage more businesses to have more, taxable revenue for the town, while still allowing landowners to make use of their land as they want, including exploring residential uses. I don't think they're in conflict at all.
Well said. Any other thoughts? All right. All right. So let's jump into tonight's sort of main course, transportation improvement concepts. And when we say transportation, we really mean everything: cars, bikes, horses, people, and also the public spaces by those transportation spaces, public spaces. So transportation is kind of a catch-all, but we're talking about a couple of different things here tonight. And as Sage mentioned, really this is still conceptual. We're still kind of throwing ideas out there, visioning. We're not making final decisions. We're going to take what we hear with tonight, share it with the council, help inform kind of the next meeting that we have with this group. But we'll have at least 2 more meetings with y'all to kind of finalize these ideas and other ideas that we're talking about before we finalize the plan, which will kind of capture the policy input that this group has worked on. So in front of you, you all have a handout. It's the large 11 by 17 sheet that you have. You can use that to basically kind of follow along our ideas. We kind of have these 5 areas that we're going to go through one by one and talk about each area. So there's a page for each of those areas that kind of sums up the ideas. You can mark down additional comments on this form if you want. If you don't get a chance to say it, you can mark that down and hand it back to us. Or you can just use this to kind of follow along as Ryan goes through the different areas. But that's just basically kind of a presentation aid for you guys to have as we go through this tonight. So Ryan's going to get up here in a second. He's going to go through each of these areas. We'll do a very brief presentation about kind of the ideas. Then we'll pause for discussion, debate, and then we'll maybe have a little show of hands voting about kind of some of the ideas and which ones you guys think are more promising and not. So with that, I'll hand it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Troy. Okay, this won't be short, so we'll get started. Next slide, Troy. So the really important thing to remember tonight is we have put these ideas out there to get as much feedback from all of you as possible. And what's really exciting about these meetings is when you actually discuss these things amongst yourself, because it usually unearths more thinking. And the more thinking that we get on the table, the better we'll be able to find consensus with your interests, with the administration's interests, and also with the community's interests. So that's kind of the big process that we're aiming towards, is incorporating as much feedback and the trade-offs, just making decisions about the trade-offs to get to the right consensus. So I'll go through these. This slide kind of outlines some of the key issues that we can look at tonight. Number one, Woodside and Kenyatta and Mountain Home intersection is a bit challenging. We heard that from all of you and the community as well. So we've come up with some ideas about that. It's unsafe to cross Woodside Road in a lot of number of different places for pedestrians, horses, and bikes. Traffic moves too fast near the school and often from Whiskey Hill into town as well. There's no pathway on the north side of Woodside Road for the students to walk. At least it's not consistent. In some cases, there's a walkway. In some cases, there's drainage. In some cases, there's parking. We want to talk about some of the parking issues in and around Roberts Grocery, where you're parking right in front. And then also the difficulty of turning left on Whiskey Hill. There's traffic coming from both directions. It's not a controlled intersection, and it can get a little hairy up there if you're trying to make a left onto it. And then also, it's not comfortable to get from the east side to the town center without a car. So that's kind of our last issue there. Next slide. So to kind of categorize these discussions, we broke it up into 5 areas. Each one kind of touches on different things. And they can kind of work in isolation, but I think they work better in concert with each other ultimately. So we'll be thinking about how the solutions for A and B and C and D could potentially kind of work all together and create a better town center environment. But we'll start off with West Woodside Road, Section A. Important thing to keep in, and Sage mentioned this earlier, these are long range ideas. There's a whole process before anything gets implemented where they survey, you look where the utilities are, you look where the property lines are in great detail. So, and there's a whole public process that goes with actually implementing these ideas. But we've put together kind of vision concepts. So the big idea, and we'll decide which of those seem to make sense. Projects are ideally funded by grants, town public works capital improvements or Caltrans. We are trying to keep investments not falling on the private property owners. Again, implementing these will require additional analysis, review, and sign off by Caltrans. And then we want to partner with landowners as much to kind of facilitate the ideas that kind of work for everybody. Next slide. So we'll start with the Western Woodside Road, and this really spans from just past Little Store, past the church, all the way up to Roberts. And it's an interesting stretch of road. You have 2 different conditions for the bike lanes. You have kind of a varying condition on the sidewalk on the south side, and then the shoulder takes all kinds of different forms on the north side. So we'll go to the next slide. Like Woodside, it's very unique. So it'll have to be studied block by block in a lot of detail, but there were some sensitive areas that were revealed when we talked to the community and that really pertained to the school, the little store, the church, and coming up to Roberts. So this is the existing section here. Again, you'll see that there's a multi-use trail that in some places is really well defined. In other places, it's a bit rough. On the right side here, which is the school side. The shoulder is around 4 feet. You got 12-foot travel lanes where the first one is actually shared with the bikes. The second one is clear of the bikes and you have a dedicated bike lane. And then you have that shoulder that varies along the way. Next slide. So right now, it is somewhat of an unsafe environment for the elementary school students. Vehicles at times do go over the speed limit and speed down this corridor. And there's a lack of parking for the commercial uses at the church and at Little Store. So some of the CAC feedback that we had before was the elementary students, pedestrian and bicycles were tied up for the top priority to fix. And we want to really fix the speeding issues that are along that stretch of road. Next slide. Some of the kind of broad ideas on here is starting with the pedestrian. How do we improve things on the north side? And then how do we improve things on the south side of the street? In some of the areas around the school, they're already fairly nicely improved. But it's when you start heading west from the school that things get a little irregular. So looking at really formalizing the pedestrian or the pedestrian and equestrian improvements along this corridor. So enhance the existing path on the south side and look for opportunities to create a new multi-use path on the north side. In and around the school zone treatments, we have a couple different concepts there that are additive. You can look at doing all of them or just some of them. And so let's go to the next slide, Troy. So traffic calming. They've already started, your city's already done quite a bit to start traffic calming with high visibility crosswalks, the rapid flashing beacons, bike lane on one side, the posted speed limit, and we noticed tonight that there's the speed check digital readout, which is really great. That's very, very helpful. So the first concept is to bracket it up a notch. Narrow the lanes to 11 feet wide, which is not an uncommon dimension for vehicles to travel. It narrows up the feeling of the road a little bit, so people do tend to drive slower in those environments. Create safer crossing points at Albion and new crossings at Fox Hollow and Miramontes. Natural connection points for the neighborhoods. And then look at curb extensions where there's a really strong definition of where the car has to go when they turn the corner. So there's no cutting the corner or where pedestrians might be standing. Speed bumps, raised crosswalks. Do folks understand the difference between a raised crosswalk, speed table, and a speed bump? If not, let me know and we can walk through that. It's a nice device. It creates a really nice crosswalk for pedestrians, and it really forces the cars to slow down without that jolt that you get with the regular speed bump. And then school zone visual treatments are really great. If you can play up the visibility of the crosswalk as much as possible and really get people's attention, which is getting harder in cars, with as many visual cues and suggestions, we think that's really important. So these are kind of like the base recommendations. Next slide. The concept 2 is, if we can, let's really formalize the multi-use trails on either side of the road. This is going to take a really careful study on the north side to look at where the power lines are or the power poles are, where there's big trees or where they're not big trees, and then there's the drainage. So that would take a lot of study, but it would be a great long-term goal for the city to achieve pedestrian safe travel on both sides of the street. The south side on the side of the school is actually, I think it's quite implementable. It's not far off from where it is today. So I think that's a good thing. If we can buy ourselves some space, take some space away from the cars and, get 2 dedicated bike lanes, it wouldn't be for the entire length because there are some trees, some really old trees that encroach and narrow the roadway. But if we could, beyond those trees, which are closer to the school going west, if we could implement dedicated bike lanes so that a cyclist, has a symmetrical street layout, they know that they're going this way on a dedicated bike lane and coming back on a dedicated bike lane. It's just kind of a clear use of the street for them. Next slide. So Little Store, it's a great asset for the community, provides services without going all the way into the center. Right now, there's a very nicely defined parking lot off the street, but there's some kind of ambiguous zones on either side of the store that could be parking. Maybe they're not parking. There's some wood stumps. There's signage that says no. So going through a process where you really define what legally is in the public right of way, what can legally be used as parking for the store, and trying to make it easy and safe for cars to park, and also dedicating space for the bikes to travel on dedicated bike lanes, I think would be a worthwhile effort to clarify all of that. Next slide. So this shows in plan kind of what we're thinking. Little stores there in the white outline with the parking lot to the right, and just kind of creating a more formalized sidewalk or path environment. Have clearly defined parking, and then narrowing the travel lanes to 11 feet gives room for a 5-foot bike lane and 6-foot upgraded DG path on the south side. Next slide. So before we jump into the next session, I thought it'd be good to kind of hear from all of you on this. What are people's initial reactions to the concepts? share with us what you're thinking. Carly.
I'm all for anything that makes it safer for pedestrians and the students and bicyclists and stuff. I do have a question from one point on one of the other slides. It said implemented was posted speed limit lowered to 15 miles per hour. Is there an update about Caltrans and lowering the speed limit near school?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yes, Louis, I'm Public Works Director. The request to reduce speed on Woodside Road in front of the elementary school was submitted to Caltrans. I'll be meeting with Caltrans on Monday and get an update on that, but we did submit that request.
Yes, go
Steve
ahead,
Lubin.
Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote this in my letter, but I'll try to do it quickly. Your diagram shows a 5-foot bike lane immediately adjacent to parked cars, which is really dangerous. And not sure there's actually enough room for bike lanes in this section. And the existing path near the school is a sidewalk, really. It's not, state and federal standards call for 12 feet of width for shared paths that are two-way. And so, these are substandard and I think dangerous. So I think balancing everything out, we'd actually do better to narrow the traffic lanes to slow people down and to get rid of the bike lanes altogether and have a 12-foot shared use path on one side with frequent crosswalks and ways to get to the crosswalks on the north side.
Great. Any other comments, Hassan?
I'm glad to see a lot of these. I know on Circulation Committee, we've been talking about various ideas like this for years, so it's very good to see it holistically. I think I agree with Steve's comments generally about, where there's enough space and there isn't. I know the north side sidewalk or path, there's another use for that, which is there's families that live up Miramontes, Audufred, et cetera, who have to literally either walk through a ditch or have to cross the road at a non-crosswalk to get to school or to get to town center, because there's actually no place to walk unless you walk opposite traffic in the bike lane, which is both illegal and dangerous. So I think trying to find whatever we can to do it there, obviously will be expensive. There's drainage concerns and it's not going to be a project we start tomorrow, but I think support for it is great. I think the crosswalks are another thing to have support from people in that area. Again, if you actually go out there and look, I used to think it was not that bad. And then when I went out there with a parent a couple times, it's people are speeding and they're not waiting for you. And frankly, you're walking across the road without a crosswalk, so they're not expecting you. So no, I think those are good ideas. I think the one thing to be cautious of with lane narrowing is obviously Caltrans has to approve it. That is a highway. Lots of people in Woodside have trailers, right? Obviously horse trailers, utility trailers, those are wider. There's usually 102 inches wide. So we just want to make sure we don't create a situation where people just knocking into things or driving across a lane, right? Like sometimes on that narrow bridge on 84, the trailers will drive across because they want to keep a buffer to that wall on the side. So that could, inadvertently cause a problem. So that's something to be aware of in narrowing in an area like this, as opposed to maybe like a residential street where you're not going to have heavy traffic.
To make one more comment, I mean, the lanes are already 11 feet near the school. The sidewalk project narrowed the lanes there, so Caltrans approved that. We're already living with that, and I haven't heard complaints about those lanes being too narrow.
So a couple of other comments. So like Isan, we look at this stuff in circulation all the time, right? So maybe a little more detail. On the traffic calming stuff, you guys need to be very thoughtful about our equestrian community. So horse trailers and speed bumps don't mix at all, right? So we would have to have, I don't know how we're going to handle that. Same idea with narrowing we talked about earlier. I think that we all want to have safety for the kids.
Mm-hmm.
Woodside Road is also a primary wildfire evacuation route.
Right.
So whatever we do we just need to make sure we don't accidentally reduce capacity so people die in a wildfire, right? Trying to get down from the hill. I would extend this to Kings Mountain. It would be silly to have a beautiful 6-foot wide DG path that stops at the little store because their trails go on Kings Mountain. And that's right where the current trail dies, right in front of the little store. So it's just such an easy opportunity to connect to the Kings Mountain Trail network. Just in back of your head, the town engineer was very concerned about drainage on the north side when this has been brought up. So they were talking about it being very expensive because of having to reroute drainage compared to making it great on the south side. I think an urgent project that we're thinking about in circulation, but you guys could help with is simply publishing clarity about rules. So we have, residents who put no parking signs up in the public right of way because they don't like the little store parking, right? And that's not probably great behavior. So, who's allowed to park where in Woodside is people don't really know, and it's not well signed. And why? Same thing about who's allowed to use the trails there. So we have examples of equestrians telling kids on bikes, get off the trail,
Right.
on public trails. And so we just, what's allowed, I think is really important so people know, because people want to follow the rules, they just don't know.
Yeah, clear signage stating directly what's permissible, what's not permissible, and
Yep.
who can use the facilities. That's great. Thank you.
I would echo what Mr. Drucker just said, and then also add that probably step one would be applying a fair amount of TLC to the existing trail along Woodside Road on the south side, because on a day like today, it is very swampy.
Yeah.
And the drainage is not good, and fixing the drainage on that and making it a 365-day-a-year path would be really useful.
Lyle, that's interesting because in a sense, all of these improvements could also go through a phasing process. So what's your absolute top, priority that needs to happen ASAP? Let's write that down. And then what are the nice to haves? Like, okay, in a perfect world with unlimited funding, we could do X, Y, and Z, or just, I think categorizing where your priorities are would be really great.
Formalizing the parking, as pointed out, would be good. The other thing, as far as additional crosswalks, if you were going to prioritize, it would be easier to justify something where Miramontes is versus Fox Hollow, which is a dead-end road that doesn't have a particular amount of either of the
Connectivity.
four forms of traffic coming in and out of it.
Okay. Yes, Richard.
So great comments here, and I agree with all of them. Does the sale of the site next door to the elementary school in any way impact the location of the improvements that you show on slide 12?
Can you go back to slide 12?
So there's been a sale of that large parcel immediately west and adjoining the school. So, and that's got a fair bit of frontage, and right now it's shown with school zone treatments. Does that potential sale and potential use or development change any of this? It's a minor point, but
Yeah,
I wanted to
I
bring it up.
think as the vision for that site evolves and what the school intends to do with it, the sensitivity is going to be access. How is that site moving people? How are they moving people onto that site? Is it through extending circulation that's already connected to the school? Or will they be looking at curb cuts or widening curb cuts and then also land use intensity? So I think at this stage, the priorities of creating safe travel for pedestrians, horses, and bikes can stay consistent. And then we'll keep an eye on that and see where it goes as they reveal more of their thinking.
Back to the little store area,
Mhm.
and you asked about priorities. So I'm a resident up near that area and walk by there daily, and it is extremely dangerous now. There's so many people coming in and out of the little store, crossing the road there, kids, adults, all during the day while the store is open. And I mean, I have seen people almost get hit. Certainly traffic does speed up once it leaves the school. It is clearly marked. All the crosswalks are great at the school for 25, and cars just speed up because there are no signs that say it's still 25 until you hit past Kings Mountain Road or at Kings Mountain Road. So I think priority besides certainly parking, delineating parking, but also putting in at least one crosswalk, whether it's at Fox Hollow, enabling people to cross the street to get to their cars wherever they are along there, or Miramontes. A crosswalk is needed, and preferably just a simple 25-mile-an-hour sign right around Miramontes, Fox Hollow, again, telling people this is still a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone.
Great. So do you think the Fox Hollow Road or the Little Store, a crosswalk right at Little Store, or instead of Fox Hollow, does that make more sense in your mind? Or do you think
I think either is fine. I mean,
Either is
whatever
fine.
you think would be easier to get past.
Okay,
Just something there needs to be there. Fox Hollow is so close to the little store that even I think it wouldn't, people would still walk those few, feet to get to Fox Hollow to cross.
to use a
and
safe
then get back to their
crosswalk.
car, yeah.
Great.
But either way, yeah.
Thanks, Vanessa.
Yeah.
Should we, oh, great. Yes, Carolyn.
Hi, just a question about the Village Hub parking that's suggested here as well. There was a helpful diagram for the little store, but I didn't see one for the space on the north side along Village Hub. Is that just because it's more self-explanatory, or were there specific recommendations that you
Yeah,
had there?
there's signage right now at Village Hub that I believe says no parking at certain times. But Troy, let's look at that. We'll take some pictures tonight and at least document exactly what the rules are in that spot. Because I remember I had to park way down Woodside Road when we did the pop-up at the Village Hub because the parking was not allowed along the street there. Let's hear from Sue.
Hi. Would the bike lane 5 foot also count as roadway? So say for a fire truck?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, if they needed that extra, there would not be any bollards or barriers between those two environments. And a lot of times in that configuration where there's an adjacent bike lane, the cyclists will like to pass slower cyclists, and they'll go into the roadway to get around those guys rather than trying to do it all in the 5 feet. So there's no barriers between the two.
Okay, so legally, if we're saying a road has to be 26 foot wide for a fire truck going to a 30 foot taller structure, we could say this road as pictured.
Definitely.
is fine.
Yeah, they
Okay.
can put the feet down on the fire truck rig because you basically have 30 plus feet to work with.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. That's on.
I just wanted to call out a praise for the school zone treatment designation. I know one thing we've identified is the school is actually quite good at hiding itself. So it kind of follows the Woodside design aesthetic of being subordinate to the land, almost too good. And so people who don't know it's there, until you are literally on top of it, you do not know there's a school there. So things we can do to make that more obvious are very good.
Excellent. Great. We'll keep going then on to area 2. Oh, really quick, Troy, do you think we should do the vote or?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, you just do a quick show of hands for everyone that supports the north side path.
We can do a priority list, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's just interesting to see kind of, I think.
Totally.
$5 million.
Right. It's a maybe.
Well, absolutely.
Okay. That's good feedback. I think we have pretty good support for the first concept, the street calming and the slowing down. How about the last idea, the marked on-street parking? How many hands for that one? Most.
Great.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, guys. All right, next
right.
area.
So Woodside Road, Kenyatta Road, Mountain Home Road. This is one of the kind of major rival points in the city or the town. And it is a slightly organic intersection. I think 100 years ago, it was probably a lot slower and a lot easier to navigate. But there's a lot more traffic that doesn't necessarily live in Woodside, but they go through this space. And so there's quite a bit of activity here. And so looking at a way to really create a lot more visual clarity for a pedestrian, for a motorist, for a bike or horse on where you should actually be in this zone. So let's go through the next slide. So these are some of the existing conditions that we have. There are 2 slip lanes, one on coming off of Kenyatta Road to make a right past Kenyatta Corners, and then one coming off Mountain Home Road, making a right onto Woodside. And those are intentionally designed to keep traffic flow going really easily, but they also create somewhat of a challenge for pedestrians, just another road to cross in getting in and around this hub. The sight lines and visibility, there are times where you're making a right off Woodside Road on the Mountain Home, and you may not realize that somebody's backing out of Robert's Grocery. So there's some concerns with that. And then also there's just some traffic congestion that comes with all of these traffic movements coming together at this one spot. There's a lack of crosswalks if you're coming from Gilbert's property going across over to Robert's Grocery. There isn't a crosswalk to the Alec Donald Park and then on over to Roberts. So it's just not super clear on where the safest path is for pedestrians at this moment in time. So there's some opportunities, I think, to improve and make things a lot clearer for folks so that cars know what to expect and pedestrians know how to get there. We did some initial concepts or discussed some initial comments in our last meeting, which is leave it alone, minor improvements, comprehensive redesign, and a roundabout. Roundabout was not popular. Comprehensive redesign was. So we moved forward with some different ideas on how to do a comprehensive redesign. These are not complete, finalized concepts by any means. These are ideas that came out of discussions with all of you, and we should beat them up tonight. And actually, some of you have provided some really, really constructive, helpful comments in your emails already. So let's keep those going and talk about them. So next slide. So the first one, minor configuration, and there's some optionality in this, but one of the things that actually was very clear in the community outreach process was people were not real excited about the slip lane off of Mountain Home Road. And so as you get into that lane and make a right, you're still worried about traffic coming down Woodside Road. And so by making the right turn really only happen in one spot at where Mountain Home touches Woodside Road seemed like a kind of a consensus move in the folks that we talked to. So it also opens up a lot of land because we're taking all of that square footage where the slip lane was, and now we get to do things with it that are oriented for pedestrians or public space. And so what we have here on the screen, this is kind of option one, where we leave the center line of Mountain Home Road alone. So traveling Mountain Home is the same as you are today, but on either side of it, we've clarified where the pedestrians belong and where the cars belong by creating well-defined sidewalks. There is a loss of a couple parking spaces right in front of Robert's Grocery, and we put them across the street and added one. But essentially, we've also added crosswalks that now connect an expanded, basically Alec Donald Park doubled in size from about 3,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet. And we now have crosswalks that carry that pedestrian traffic along Woodside Road all the way to the corner of Robert's Grocery, where they can then cross Woodside Road over to Kenyatta Corners. So kind of a no-brainer, super simple pedestrian path, which is kind of what we're shooting for, just to make it as easy as possible. And then if you look at where Mountain Home Road engages the parking access for Gilbert's, we've created another crosswalk there, just so there's a nice pedestrian loop. Cars are really slowing down, and we've kind of suggested even maybe considering like a cobblestone or some kind of textured paving where the parking is to really slow down the car movement in that zone. This is showing reversed back-in parking. It could still be 90 degree. This was just an idea we wanted to run by folks and see if it made sense. This allows folks to open up the back of their car directly to the store and not take the cart out in the traffic. So we thought there might be some advantages to that. Yes.
How many complaints are there, if any, for accidents that would relate to all the things that you've just mentioned around the stores?
So in the community outreach process, people did convey that it is difficult as a pedestrian to get from one side of Woodside
No,
to
I
the
asked
other.
you, have there been any, I should have been more clear maybe.
Yes.
Has anybody ever been hurt or hit or whatever? Not that I'm.
I'll hand that to Sage.
Hi, Melissa Cardinale, Acting Town Manager. We asked the Sheriff's Office for some data for reported collisions for Woodside Road, Kenyatta Road, and Mountain Home Road between January 1st, 2024 to yesterday, April 20th, 2026. And there's 10 incidents.
Melissa, can you be specific? Like, is it around the store itself?
I have street names here. So I have Kenyatta Road and Woodside Road. I have an address, 750 Mountain Home Road. I have Kenyatta Road, Woodside Road, Mountain Home Road at Cedar Lane.
Save your breath, because I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about the store.
About these would not tell me if it just says Woodside Road and Kenyatta Road. So it's just at the intersection.
Well, that's quite a distance. I'm just trying to be specific about how dangerous that this is. I mean, you're talking about a store that's been there a long time. I haven't really heard of many accidents there where people, and it may be wonky. Maybe they're getting out and people are putting packing them into their car as they get in. I don't understand. It seems that we're just assuming a lot of things, and then maybe you'd be making a hit on the store to change it around.
Well, I think we're trying our best. It's not that we're responding to the community input that pedestrian circulation could be safer. And so
What do
that's,
you mean it could be safer? Everything could always be safer. When you walk out of here tonight, it's been raining. It could be safer if it didn't rain.
yeah.
Okay, so you have to watch out tonight, everybody, when you leave. We could go on and on and on about what's safer. But so far, we have a track history of, we have lived here 60 years in this town. So I'm just trying to think, how many times have I heard of anybody getting hurt coming out of Roberts or coming out of our place or wherever?
I think it's a very fair discussion to have as to what level of comfort is appropriate and what the trade-offs are.
What's the trade-offs? Just changing everything downtown? Is that it?
No, I mean, we can talk about trade-offs in very quantitative terms. You know, one is you pick up 2 crosswalks, you lose 2 parking spaces in front of the store. So there's kind of a quantitative way perspective to look at it. There, you know, for 20 years, I worked in the world of retail, and there's a customer perspective on it in terms of, you know, what's comfortable for, you know, different people, different size of groups, people with strollers, all things like that. So there's a lot of thinking, and I'd love to hear. I mean, it's a great discussion to have, and that's why we're here tonight. So, yeah, Julie.
Oh, I couldn't see the red. Okay. Oh, there it is. It was hidden. I walk in this intersection very frequently, and I am a huge advocate of those pedestrian crosswalks personally, but just also watching kids do it. And there's a game of Frogger going on right now. So however we're going to approach this, I think those crosswalks are critical. I also frequently drive in this small area between Mountain Home Road and Woodside Road. And already the cars backing out and the cars going on Woodside Road, it's pretty tricky. While it looks elegant on the page, I can't imagine it happening from both sides. I think it would be quite problematic. So I would raise that concern. And the park looks quite cute here. I'm not sure if it would actually be utilized very much with, you know, traffic on all 3 sides of it. So I would mention that as well. But in terms of the crosswalks, I think those are amazing.
Great. Troy, let's go through the next 2 images really quick, and then we can go back to. And I guess there's one option where we could go through all 3 options and then do comments, but what do you prefer? That? Okay, so we'll go through this fairly quickly then, and then we'll come back and we can go over each option. So this, I modeled it in the computer, and there's a lot of grade change on this site, so we'd have to be really careful about that. But this shows Alec Donald Park expanded to about 6,000 square feet from what it is today, which is about 3,000. So Definitely addressing traffic noise is important, buffering the movement, creating a nice respite from all that intensity. I do think with a good landscape designer, it's entirely possible, and there's precedent for something like that. But let's go through the next two concepts. And the three concepts are meant to be really different, to try and gather as much feedback from you as possible. This is the view kind of looking from the hill towards the park, just to kind of give you an idea of the scale of it. So it's quite a bit bigger. So there's some opportunity for programming that you don't currently have for different kinds of seating environments, different kinds of vegetation and trees and things. One of the initial goals was let's create an opportunity for a public gathering space in the city. So it seemed getting rid of the slip lane and taking advantage of some of this dirt was an opportunity for that. Next slide. So this concept here also is somewhat meant to be very minimal in terms of the traffic center lines for the street alignments, keeping all of that roughly the same, but creating opportunities for better crosswalk and connectivity. And this one takes an approach where the parking that was in front of Robert's Grocery gets relocated to where Alec Donald Park was. And then the Alec Donald Park gets relocated to directly adjacent to the front entry of Robert's Grocery. So grabbing a sandwich, hanging out with friends, doing stuff like that, or coming from Kiana Quarters, just crossing the crosswalk, you've got a nice little crossroads intersection there to gather. This plaza is about 3,000 square feet, so it's almost a direct trade for your existing Alec Donald Park, which is 3,000 for this right next there. It is smaller than the previous concept, and it'll be smaller than the next concept. So this is just a quick sketch of how that would kind of feel and scale. It's not insignificant in size for a kind of a retail environment plaza. That's not, sometimes having something that's a little smaller can actually make it feel a little more bustling and vibrant. So that's kind of the concept there. Some of the challenges that were noted with this is now the carts are going across the street. And that's kind of the big obvious one that's quite problematic. So next slide. And so this is a different view of that. Again, the idea behind this scheme, the previous scheme was if we're not changing street alignments, maybe these are a little easier to implement. But the next one, we tested that theory based on some concepts that Steve provided. And then Alta, our transportation consultant, took those ideas and kind of worked with some of the constraints that we revealed. And so this was a concept where Mountain Home Road actually curves, and it basically imagine widening the slip lane. So we take the slip lane that's there, we widen it into a two-way street, and then align it with the Kenyatta Lane intersection in terms of creating one crosswalk, one simple intersection there. And then the interesting byproduct of this is you create this Alec Donald Plaza that's about 6,000 square feet, so it's double the size of the previous one. And then you really tighten up the intersection where Kenyatta Road and Woodside Road come together. So now you've got just a very simple T intersection. Traffic movements are much simpler there. And the pedestrian crossing zone gets much smaller. So we're able to move the curb out, and the area that says landscape on the right side of Kenyatta Road is a substantial expansion of that land area there. So there's some interesting opportunities in terms of people arriving at Kenyatta Road. There could be a really great signage moment at the park. The landscape area at the other side of the street, they start to create a gateway on both sides of Woodside as you enter the commercial core. And so let's go to the next slide. And so just so you kind of have an idea of how this feels in 3D, this one here retains the pull-in parking. It's just not directly in front of the store, it's just off to the side. It does introduce a second stop sign, a second intersection. So you'd have Kenyatta Road and Woodside Road, and then you would have the Kenyatta Lane and Woodside Road intersections, both with stop signs. So this is also kind of working in conjunction with the idea that we're slowing down traffic on Woodside Road up to Whiskey Hill. So, and then that's the other view looking from Kenyatta Road. So, so these are the three options kind of next to each other. Concept one, about 6,000 square feet. It's across the street. Concept two, you've got the Plaza Hard up against the Roberts Grocery, but no changes to the street alignment. And then concept three is kind of a major surgery where we reroute the road, but we kind of reveal this opportunity for a large plaza directly adjacent to the grocery store, and then also maintain the pull-in parking. So, yes.
When I'm looking at this, I can't stand it, by the way. I'm thinking about this is serving a lot of people that don't live here. And, you know, this is the people that live in Woodside. And to think that there'd be a big park there with people throwing their paper down and, you know, their sandwich they didn't finish eating and all that. To create something like that in the middle of town, you think that's a nice thing? I don't. I just don't. I think it's stupid. Sorry. I'm not sorry.
Public open space does exist in a lot of towns. But where I'm going with this is you're absolutely right. They require a lot of care and maintenance and attention. They're not free. They require a yearly budget. You have to take care of them. And there's a lot of discussion about and the discussion is on both sides of the coin about what their value is to the community and how they're used by both residents and non-residents, and how they either generate or don't generate business for the properties and value for the properties that are near it. So I think that's what we're here tonight, is to kind of hear your thoughts on those ideas. And, you know, there's always option zero, which is leave it exactly the way it is. So let's keep talking. I'll stop talking. You keep talking. Yes, Carolyn.
I would be in favor of concept one for two reasons. One is the expansion of the footprint of the park to 6,000 square feet, but also because it makes it's the only one that really separates the park from the market. And I think that in concepts 2 and 3, while I like the idea of creating some sort of plaza that can be an extension of the market or you know, where you would go to potentially eat your sandwich, it would, to me, feel like it was kind of private property, or it belongs to Roberts, or it's maybe not as welcoming to others. Like, do I have to purchase something in order to sit there? You know, those kinds of questions that someone could ask themselves. And then being directly adjacent, like in 2 and 3, would Roberts then be somewhat not responsible for cleaning? Because we just heard what was said, but like, maybe their staff looks around and they would feel compelled to do a little bit more maintenance than they otherwise would if there was the separation. Also, with the larger footprint, some of the objectives the committee identified earlier, like having that public gathering space, doing pop-ups, a farmer's market, that seems more conducive in concept one.
Great. Thank you.
I'd like to have a completely different attitude than both previous speakers. I think having the public space adjacent to the store is where people meet casually, coming and going. It's not, I don't think this is the kind of public space where people go to for an intentional event unless it's a farmer's market. But I think it would be dead unless it was next to where people are walking anyway. So having it next to the store is way better, I think. I think this is the kind of space we were looking for in 2 and 3. On 1 and 2, I'm worried that the configuration of the intersection is just as problematic as it is now practically. I think it's important to move traffic through this intersection more quickly, and I think simplifying it, as I don't know what Alta thinks about this, but my impression is that there's a lot of confusion because the intersection is so complicated, and that simplifying it would move traffic through more quickly. And I don't care that much that people have to stop multiple times, like I think they should, on multiple crosswalks on the entire town center. It's, if we get rid of the big backup point, which is here, I think it would reduce the through trip, even if people are going slower on the way. I think that's what I'm hoping for.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Richard.
So two comments. One is, I would argue here you have the biggest palette available to the town, given the right of ways. So I see a value in when we perhaps get a little bit further in delineating that property line between private and public. Here, it's a little bit surprising because, as I said in the email that I sent out today, the one that made it into the desk items, this is a very unusual intersection with the town's property going through nearly all of Roberts. So you have this huge, relatively speaking, amount of land on which to work. And so it gives you the opportunity to control the concepts more so than almost anywhere else. So that's one comment. Second is, we've heard there's a constraint on finances. There's a fair bit of improvement work here. Who pays for that? I don't think, given how long I've been here, the town is going to pay for this. This has got to be privately funded. Is it funded by Roberts, or is it funded by Roberts and private citizens who live here? I'm not sure either of those concepts will work here. So I think that tends to favor something like concept one, despite the logic Steve laid out. So my gut feel is you're not going to find private citizens who will fund this. So, and you're not going to get Roberts to fund it. So that's my gut.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Hassan.
Yeah, so I'm going to echo off various people. I think I agree with Caroline, separating the public space from the store. While Steve's functionally correct, I think from a welcoming standpoint, it's more, this is a public space. It doesn't, just like the confusion with the roadside trails, you have to have some separation or signs to demonstrate to people where they should or should not be and where they're allowed to be. So for me, that number one's the only one that does that. More crosswalks is fantastic. And I think, in my opinion, I agree with Steve in the sense that when you want to get traffic through here quickly, because, it's one thing on a weekday, school drop off, whatever, but weekends, everyone who's been here, sunny Saturday or Sunday in June, and it's back to the highway, across the highway, or the other way up back, to the bottom of the hill. So making this, as much as we want to make safe spaces for pedestrians, bicyclists, etc., we need to acknowledge the reality that the cars are the predominant form of transportation here, that most of them probably aren't from Woodside, and we can't put a gate up on 84 and keep them out. So unless somebody wants to pose that, go ahead. And so we have to accommodate that to make it faster, because none of us want to be stuck. Oh crap, it's stuck. It's taking me 45 minutes to go home and it should take me 5. I think keeping the slip lane on Kenyatta is extremely important. You have the island, so pedestrians have a safe space to kind of get to, and then have 2 short crosswalks. I know in the mornings to school drop off, there has to be, I don't know, a quarter of the kids probably live in that direction and are getting driven to school. So I think, again, you want to keep that slip lane. And again, in the evenings, right, people are coming, using it as a cut through. So we want to keep it quick, but safe for cars. I'm a supporter of one myself. And I will add one more. We have to be very cautious with the spots at the corner. As they're laid out currently, I think they're fundamentally deficient because they block sight lines, especially if you have a truck there, you cannot see around it. So the number of spots that should be taken out of the corner needs to be studied and kind of logically laid out. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you. Yes, Lyle.
I wanted to echo what Isan had just mentioned. What any solution needs to address the fact that from going eastbound on Woodside Road and looking towards the stop line, going north on Mountain Home Road, there is no direct line of sight, and any solution has to solve that. And unfortunately, it does not look like concept 2 addresses that. Getting rid of the slip lane from Mountain Home onto Woodside Road is an interesting idea. As a practical matter, I understand where Leanne's coming from, but right now, every day at lunchtime, and especially on the weekends, there are a bunch of bikers that are out there on the park, which is essentially a traffic island, and they're eating their sandwiches and they're probably leaving litter. And whether we do nothing or do any of the 3 concepts, that is still going to be happening. The one technical point you would have to think about is if you get rid of the slip lane off of Mountain Home Road, you would need to radius the turn at the 4-way stop so that a semi-trailer coming out of Roberts from the back can get onto Woodside Road and get back to the freeway.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Dan?
So one of the top things I heard from our residents, kind of east of 280 is that this idea of public spaces is really important to them. So they can come to town and have a space to hang out. And if they buy a sandwich at Roberts, a place to sit and eat. So that makes me gravitate towards the 1 and 3. And I understand the arguments on both sides. The primary for me is this idea of having public space in downtown Woodside, I think is really important. I like that little parklet that you have in concept 3 across the street. The idea that you could have you could even have some public art in that as a gateway into the town, I think could be beautiful. Christine didn't make it tonight, but I think there's an opportunity to have a discussion with her and Leanne, who are their 2 property owners there, about what do they think? Because it's, for example, one of the big things that's missing in downtown is a bathroom. There's no restroom. There used to be one at Roberts. I think it's no longer open. So, is there some deal to be done here with, hey, let's have the town provide this large patio, and Christine, are you willing to keep it clean and provide a restroom in return? She may say, no, absolutely not. I don't know. But is there I think you need to have a public-private discussion like that might guide how do you get funding and how do you keep it clean and all that. And same thing with Leanne. We don't want to, they need to decide they want to do this.
Yep.
Right? So.
Don't even put me in there, but Christine and I are pretty close.
Yeah, totally. I don't know if she sees it as better. Like this, does this bring a lot more people to the store?
Hopefully coming out of her ears right now. I think I just
Okay.
don't think it belongs here. I think there's other places that we have such a beautiful town and so many beautiful places. We could get a little more, rather than sticking it in front of a grocery store. Is there like a peaceful place?
Is
you
there,
could have
is there a place do you have something in mind? Like,
Saturday?
do you have something in mind that's a place downtown where people could gather?
No. I think people could gather, they already gather over across the street. Yeah, I can't hear you, I'm sorry. No, it's okay, thank you. My husband would love that if he never could hear me. He's sitting right there. Aha, Bill, I'm bringing this home, and now you're really gonna hear it. So what did you just ask me about, Christine?
No, I just asked if you had if you like the idea, you may not like the idea of a public gathering place somewhere downtown.
Well, I
do-
think public gatherings are great, but I was going to say, thank you, just reminded me. I thought across the street, it kind of goes on in the middle of the place there. It's really kind of cool. Everybody's out there and they're safe off the street. And there's garbage cans there to get rid of your stuff. And you're buying things in the store. I guess it's Christine's place. And I forget the name of our dear friends on the corner that own the food place. But I just think it's idiotic. I can't stand looking at this. Sorry, just don't. Seems too like you're in another state or another country or something.
Julia?
I really do value the public space, but in thinking of what our primary goal is, and acting on behalf of our neighbors and the other residents of Woodside, I think the most important thing to them, to Hassan's point, is moving quickly through this intersection. And the biggest frustration is when we are stuck at this intersection. And unfortunately, I think all 3 of these concepts will make it worse. Not having the slip lanes is going to be a problem, having cars backing in. I can't envision that any of them would make it faster. I know that we said no to a roundabout. Given the choice between these 3 and a roundabout, I'm wondering if many people would actually say roundabout might be better. And given the choice between the 3 of them and status quo, I'm not speaking for myself necessarily, but I do think there might be a strong support even of status quo, because while I do value this land and these public spaces, I think it would be to the detriment of quick-moving traffic. And last point, I think there was an area where we approved a gazebo or something. I don't know exactly where that is, but I think it's behind here or something. Maybe that would be a close but not impacting traffic place to have public space.
Great. Yes, Sue.
I think 1 and 2 have not solved the problem of what Lyle mentioned, the car in front of Roberts going eastbound on Woodside Road at the Mountain Home. more so than not, I think people double dip. They go two at a time there while the other three lanes are deciding who's going to go next. They're just shooting through there. So we really need to solve better visibility there. Um, Concept 2 may work, but you would need to, I think, bevel or cut off that. You've made the problem worse, I think. Concept 3 is neat, but I don't mind the slip lane at all. But then my question would be, if we're now going to have to stop twice, I must go 2, 4, 6 times a day through this intersection. And now I'm going to stop at Kenyatta. I'm going to turn left on Woodside Road. I'm going to go a couple of cars. Hopefully there's no backup and stop again. So I'm not going to like that. So so tell me about that intersection at Kenyatta Lane. When I come off of Kenyatta Lane, am I only allowed to turn right? Or now is that going to be a two-way road? So if I'm coming through Mountain Home Road, can I go through that intersection onto Kenyatta Lane? Maybe not. And if I'm coming down Kenyatta Lane, can I also then turn left onto Woodside Road? So if I can turn left onto Woodside Road, being a resident, I know the cut through. I'm going to go down La Cuesta or turn left on La Cuesta, right on Kenyatta Lane, and bypass the Kenyatta Woodside Road altogether. So you're going to add more traffic on Kenyatta Lane if you do that. So I do not like the idea of stopping twice through that intersection. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Any other comments?
Thank you, Sue, for mentioning that. I think 2 stop signs in that close proximity, again, with the weekend traffic and whatnot, will just potentially become an even bigger disaster, which then defeats the purpose of getting people through there quickly. That's just my guess. Traffic engineer should confirm that.
Great, thank you. Richard?
So say it's concept 0, leaving it at status quo. Are there changes, given the town's fee title ownership, changes that can be made to the parking at Roberts by the town?
Gene, that might be a question for you, is basically, does this town have any jurisdiction to take the dangerous parking spaces at the corner of Roberts, being that they might be, or they are in the public right-of-way, and make that a safer intersection?
Well, I'll start to answer and then I can defer to Louis if he has anything to add. My understanding is that's public right-of-way. It's not owned in fee title by the town. It's public right-of-way and controlled by Caltrans, is my understanding.
And I echo that. I don't think I have any more to add. It is public right-of-way, and it is currently just being controlled by Caltrans.
So a follow-up, where does Caltrans stop then on Mountain Home Road? And where does the town's right-of-way begin?
Again, my understanding is that's all Caltrans right-of-way.
Your question is essentially how wide is the Caltrans right-of-way and how far down Mountain Home does it extend?
Right.
Yeah.
Sitting here tonight, we can't answer that question, but we can follow up and see what we can figure out about that, so we can give you specific measurements.
Yeah, so my general thought is the town may have fee title ownership to quite a bit or all of the land underneath those parking stalls. And doesn't that give perhaps leverage to the town with Roberts to perhaps convince Roberts that, hey, making a change or changes here to these parking stalls that are at times unsafe may be wise and warranted. So again, I'm back on status quo, but maybe there's a tweak or a change that increases safety at very little cost. No cost to the town, perhaps.
One of the considerations in this concept 0, which we could add, is in concept 1, you can actually leave the parking adjacent to Roberts as it is. You know, that's the existing street right away, and you don't have to add the parking on the park, though it might serve folks that want to spend time in the park. The big question mark I'd like to hear back from all of you on is it important to have a crosswalk going from the corner of Alec Donald Park along Woodside over to the crosswalk that leads to Kenyatta Corners, going across Mountain Home. Troy, do you want to just drag the cursor on it? So, because this is where right now we've taken out, a parking space to open up visibility, and it also allows a crosswalk to come across there. And so that, at a minimum, you could leave the slip lane, making a right on the Woodside. This one already still has the slip lane going on the Kenyatta. You could have the 3,000 square foot Alec Donald Park, but you could have a crosswalk that gets people along that frontage and then do a proper crosswalk at the slip lane for pedestrians so that there's clear pedestrian path from along Woodside Road. And that might be an option 0. An alternate to option 0 would be to take concept 1, return the parking more status quo on Roberts, but lose the slip lane, lose the one slip lane. So that would be another option. So let's go to the next slide. So we've covered the first bullet. Show of hands, which concept do you support? No change?
Maybe we can say that option 0 is
Option 0?
minimal. We were talking
Yeah.
about it's not nothing, but it's maybe the minimal possible change. Let's say that's the first option.
Okay, so we could go no change, option 0, concept, and then option 1, 2, and 3. How's that? All right, so we'll start with, go ahead, Carly.
I do have a question about option 0. Has the intersection been studied with the flow of traffic, and have they looked at how you could make it safer? Because I've probably gone through that intersection a billion times. My commute is the school to Glenwood, and
So these 3 concepts were run through our transportation consultant, Alta. And the third option was actually kind of entirely their authorship. And their aim was to increase pedestrian crossing to its safest condition possible, was to bring Kenyatta Road in more to the 90-degree angle, so you don't have that obtuse angle there. So bring it in at a 90, tighten the pedestrian crossing as much as possible, and then separate Mountain Home from the Kenyatta intersection so that the Mountain Home traffic, which is less than the Kenyatta Road traffic, does not impact that Woodside Kenyatta flow. So that was kind of their concept on option 3, to smooth the transportation flow of cars through that area. So there was, so that was kind of the idea, but all 3 of these were run through Alta. And, the first option really did not have much impact. Deleting the slip lane, there's still, there's visibility issues with the slip lane as it is today, both for pedestrian conflict and for vehicle conflict, because it's hard to see oncoming traffic. So they felt like the option 1 was kind of, not a lot. Even though you lose the slip lane, there's not a major impact on the traffic flow. Concept 2, same thing. They moved the same for the cars. And then option 3 was they felt that the traffic flow at Kenyatta and Woodside would be much better, offsetting the impacts at the Kenyatta Lane Mountain Home intersection.
I'd be curious to see what the Mountain Home residents, how they would feel taking that slip lane away. I'm sure that it keeps the flow of traffic going from that street to Kenyatta going, right? Several times a week, people are blowing through that intersection, not stopping at the stop signs. And it's even worse on the weekends because it's out of towners. It's not people that are aware of the 10-way stop or however many people are stopping at the same time. And Glenwood too, like Glenwood and Kenyatta, my husband has multiple clips of people nearly T-boning him or other cars that are coming onto Kenyatta. So it's just, the amount of traffic that is increasing due to Google Waze, traffic on the freeways, I appreciate all of these concepts and thank you for taking the time to make them. But living in this town and going through that intersection every day, all day, 20 times a day, I feel like personally, in my opinion, just concept zero, but making it safer, whatever little adjustments you need to make so people have better visibility or however, I don't know. I feel like would be helpful.
Steve?
On concept 3, you show a stop sign eastbound on Woodside Road. Is that necessary? It seems like it's awfully close to the intersection, whereas the other direction, it doesn't. Seems like you could not have.
Troy, can you go back to the plan for 3 that has all the stop stuff on it? So your question, Steve, is the stop sign necessary at where Mountain Home touches Woodside?
Exactly, the eastbound on Woodside Road, is that stop sign necessary since it's so close to the intersection? It seems like you have a short stacking distance there back to Kenyatta Road. Eliminating it wouldn't make it a lot more dangerous.
Well, then I don't know how you'd get out of Mountain Home Road, right? You'd have to wait. You have to wait.
You have to wait for a gap that's caused by people taking turns at the intersection, which is close by.
That's an interesting idea, actually. That could be looked at. But I think that, and Sue raised it too, the movements of people on Kenyatta Lane would not be something we'd want to encourage with this concept. So if this were concept move forward, I think we would want to. Certainly, we have like a left and right only from Mountain Home, so you can't cut through Kenyatta Lane, but you might have to do that the other end as well, so folks wouldn't cut down Kenyatta and then take the left out. So I think this could use a little refinement, but there is a scenario where I could see no stop sign, I guess, on Woodside, but that would again be a trade-off, I think, of throughput versus connectivity.
Great.
Yeah, we got some more.
Actually, let's hear from Steve Patrick.
Well, I think everybody's comments really terrific, and it's certainly changed my thought about which way to look at any of these. Probably coming in here, I thought option 3 seemed pretty good, but option 3 seems like it'd be a nightmare for people coming off Mountain Home Road wanting to go out Kenyatta Road. And then I think looking at option 1, the diagonal back in parking, somebody comes out of those parking spaces, how are they going to actually go back out Kenyatta Road? I mean, unless just going down it, the diagonal parking doesn't, I think, kind of work. I think probably looking at all these options, I definitely think option 3 is really nice. It creates a nice park, a nice plaza, people hang out. But now we haven't addressed kind of the thing that drove probably this whole thing. We're not increasing any parking. So now we're going to get 20, 30 people. Now, I love people coming in here from out of town. I mean, we live in a wonderful place, and it's our duty to kind of make it, for everybody in the community, not just Woodsiders. However, where are these people going to park? I mean, we haven't done anything to address that. So probably looking back, probably a modification on option 0 makes most sense. Make the intersection safer. Maybe get rid of the slip lane coming off Mountain Home Road to expand the potential of, getting some more space.
Option 1.
Concept 1, so that right turn can be made, by a truck. So if you get rid of the slip lane, I think somebody brought up, you need to bring semis come out of back of Roberts. They'd never be able to make that U-turn unless they, rub up against the north side of Woodside Road.
We can definitely, we have the software for the truck movements, and I think I've shown like a 30-foot radius, but what you're asking is really interesting, the parking impact of an attraction itself, the square. So what's interesting is if we took this concept here and returned the 90-degree pull-in parking, which there's plenty of room to do that in front of Roberts, the parking across the street could serve the park, and that's on public property.
Right. So if you I don't want to say get rid of, but if the slip lane disappears, maybe that would give the opportunity to have basically 90-degree parking on both ways, the 90-degree parking on both ways. And seems that the crosswalk coming from Kenyatta Road side to the Roberts side, if it even was pushed further east, I guess, so that the cars actually stop closer to the intersection of where Mountain Home Road intersects, it kind of gets rid of a little bit of the blind spot. So they're pulling up much further, kind of where the mailbox is. Is the mailbox still there? So you pull up. So that crosswalk coming from the island at Kenyatta Road and Woodside Road kind of intersects much further east, so that the cars actually stop further east. So when they look to the right, they're actually looking down Mountain Home Road rather than, cars with the blind spot. That crosswalk there, move that to there. I do think it's important to have the crosswalk on the south side of Woodside Road. I don't know. I think people can walk around to get up. They don't need a crosswalk necessarily from the Alex Manala Park corner straight across. I mean, it doesn't get you anywhere. It gets you to the baby Jesus thing. It's just not. It gets you nowhere. So unless
Steve, the really neat thought that you're sharing here is taking that crosswalk over to Kenyatta Corners and shifting that to the right, so that car now where the S is not that one, to the left, Troy. Like if we're stopping that car further, like right there, and that crosswalk comes down, that's a huge improvement. That's a really beautiful idea. I like that a lot. And then that wasn't my idea. That was Steve Patrick's idea. We'll call it the Steve Patrick Crosswalk. Anyhow, but yeah, no, I think what we need to do is go back. We need to create an option 0 that restores the 90-degree parking in front of Roberts, but creating a safe zone for a crosswalk, and then rethinking the position of that crosswalk that goes over to Kenyatta Corner so that the cars are coming a lot further into that Mountain Home view corridor. That would be really cool. Yeah.
And do we really need to have 2 crosswalks there? If we only had the 1 crosswalk, it might enable us to push the cars further off the road.
You mean
like going through the park, we've got one on Woodside Road, and then we've got one underneath the word Alec Donald Park. We've got 2 crosswalks.
the lower and the the 2 crosswalks connecting to Roberts. I see the lower one. I think we need the upper one because that's going to be the primary path of traffic to Kenyatta Corner.
Agree.
But the lower one is definitely optional. And that would give back 1 more parking space.
Actually, I think the lower one is used quite by town staff walking to the store.
Well, and actually, so we do have a couple more things to talk about. And what's interesting is these concepts can work together. And so the shared street concept that we're going to cover in the next section, which Richard kind of turned us on to, which is a really interesting concept, could work really well with the lower crosswalk. So I think there's a process where we're going to go through a lot more steps about which ideas, survive the next stage. And then as we see which ideas survive for each area, we're going to look for those pieces because we can pull ideas from other schemes that don't get picked and start matching the successful components to the overall vision. And so if we do end up looking at that shared street concept, that lower crosswalk might be relevant. Okay, so we'll go to the next section.
Quick vote.
Oh, yeah.
So any merit in not taking a vote, but instead directing Good City Company and Urban Field Design to go back and tweak concepts 0 and 1, and then present those 2 concepts to the CAC, to the group, ask for a quick vote back, allowing you all to go to the town perhaps with updates on those 2 concepts, together with perhaps concept 2 and 3 and the vote.
Sure. Yeah, we could, we don't need to make a movement here, a motion here or anything, but I think it sounds like the general agreement is for us to create a concept zero plus that does the littlest possible to enhance safety, I think is what I'm hearing. But we'll keep some of these other ideas alive to show to council that we've had the discussion, but I think the group here is expressing a support for a new option that we can create and bring to council.
I think we'll modify option 1 to show the 90-degree parking, restore as much of that as possible. And then have the parking and the shifted crosswalk that Steve Patrick brought up. And then option 0, we'll just look at some minor touches, perhaps moving the crosswalk as well, that Steve mentioned, to improve the visibility, but retain the slip lane going towards Whiskey Hill off of Mountain Home. So that will be the first option, yeah, or zero option.
I'd like to add that the slip lane I ride a bicycle through there quite a bit, and it's really scary because cars can't see me coming. It's such a low angle. It's super dangerous for bicyclists going up Woodside Road, and I'd really love to see it gone.
Great. Okay, let's jump to the next one, Troy.
Moving on.
So it's only 6:45. This is awesome. We're making great time. All right. Area C, Central Woodside Road. And then, so what we have here, we have a couple concepts, and I'll walk through them. And let's go to the next one, Troy. So when we looked at this, there were a lot of ideas in the past studies at Woodside on how to transform or formalize Woodside Road a little bit into a more obviously pedestrian-friendly environment, or perhaps even a more Main Street environment. And so we discussed, no change, minor improvements, new frontage road, full Main Street. And the more we looked at it, the big changes are really, really hard. They're hard from a financial perspective. They're hard from a civil engineering perspective. And so what we've done is we've developed a concept where it would be entirely, the question is, if a landowner came to the city and said, I'm going to provide parking on my site in a different form than a pull-in 90-degree parking stall off of Woodside Road, what are my options? And so in the next slide, go ahead. We looked at what would, if a landowner elected to remove that pull-in parking, what would the impacts be on the overall environment? And so, in this intermittent sequence, where say two landowners decide to utilize that land for redevelopment, and I think it would really, these buildings have been improved upon fairly recently, which Richard, you pointed out. So the likelihood of redevelopment, that's a speculative thing. But in the event that one of these do in the future, how would we guide that vision? And is there an option where you could create a Main Street if the landowner elected to not have that pull-in parking and go with the public parking along the curb, and then provide the other parking that they need internal to their site, which of course comes with costs and all those things. So let's go to the next slide. So assumptions, streetscape and pull-in private parking only evolves if owner voluntarily redevelops and opts into the new parallel configuration. This goes back to that very second slide, which talks about what options can we give the owners. And so this is, if an owner is going to explore residential uses on the second level or a new development, this could be an option that we provide them, which is to reconfigure, get more land for the building, and reconfigure the parking. The new developments are park to code requirements on site for parking demand. And then parking on the north side of Woodside Road can only happen if at some point the entire street's transformed and the center lane is no longer needed to pull into pull-in parking. So there's a lot of really big ifs. And Richard wrote a beautiful letter that kind of outlined in a lot of detail some of the constraints and impacts that a developer would have to go through in order to get to this outcome. This is something that we kind of heard over and over again from the community feedback, a desire for kind of a formal Main Street in Woodside. I think we can share with them the constraints and the difficulties of that, but we can also share with them that it is technically difficult, but physically possible. So next slide. So this assumes that each property has forgone their pull-in parking off of Woodside Road and converted to a public parked condition. At that point, the turn lane off of Woodside Road would not be needed, and you could achieve a formalized, more regular Main Street with parallel parking, 5-foot bike lane with a 3-foot buffer. So you'd have parallel parking 8 feet, and then you'd have your two 12-foot through lanes, and then another 8 feet, and then your 7-foot for parallel parking and a pathway on the top. Next slide. And so this would be your arrival moment into town. And again, these are all measures to help slow and calm traffic going into the town. The purple boxes, that implies that that property has been redeveloped. It could apply to all of them, but this is a very hypothetical concept, and it's something that we're mostly looking to, is this an option that you would allow a developer to pursue who owns that property and wants to change that street parking format? And if they did, what would you ask of them in return in terms of sidewalk width, planting, and things like that?
Do you have a guess, if I own one of those purple boxes, what it's worth before and after this change? Just a rough, is it
Definitely
property's
not.
worth 2x or 4x, or what does that mean?
Developers get really upset when architects proclaim.
I get it, but that's this is like but this is the crux
Um,
of the matter, right?
It is,
Like,
and it's a little bit, this is something where, so we do downtown master plans, but we always work with the developer consultant on those projects to understand the economics and the feasibility of it. So this is something where that's a great question, and that's an important question. And Richard, you've definitely asked this question.
Yeah, so to take an example, 2979's building is 4,000 square feet, 2,000 each floor plate, and it's one of the larger buildings there. It's been renovated, in my opinion, to the nines. The exterior's been entirely resheathed, interior's taken to the studs, done in several stages, done to a very high standard. JP Morgan Chase spent $750,000 on the improvements. We tear that all down, we write that all off, and then we start anew. We start anew by putting parking on the lower level because we have to park the building inside the property line, and we have no more parking on Woodside Road. And perhaps we have less parking in the rear. And perhaps we lose the handicap spot that we have for the village doctor. It's not clear. The scale here is extremely small. If you were talking about a much bigger footprint, if one entity owned all purple boxes and maybe the little building at the end and the Gilbert Center and the Pioneer, then you have scale and size and scope. And so these, technically difficult, physically possible improvements can be leveraged over a much greater square footage. I have never seen anything in 45 years that I've been doing real estate and construction. I've never seen anything like this. The scale's too small. It's constrained too much. It was set in concrete almost 100 years ago with the build outs of these buildings. And it was studied to the nines in the late 80s. And the town and the property owners got themselves into deep trouble. We were one of the only property owners who didn't sue the town. The town had multiple cases of litigation, had a recall election. The mayor moved to Seattle. It was so bad. And the vice mayor faded away. It's really not going to work.
And this,
I laid
this
that
is,
out in 23 points. So
this is where I want to stress that this is not a mandate. This is simply if a developer has the brilliant idea to come to the table despite all these constraints and say, I actually don't need the pull-in parking, what would you want in return? And what this does, it outlines a method in which you could over time deliver a streetscape that's more conducive to a formalized Main Street. And that's really all this is. And Richard, I do agree that it's really hard to pull anything off with this fine grain lot scale that exists here. The only place I've seen it happen, and actually they didn't have to rebuild the sidewalks or anything, was Carmel, where they've torn down small buildings and put back up small buildings. And I still don't quite understand how they made that work even there. But that's kind of the case study for that kind of development pattern, but it's really uncommon. So we wanted to put this out there because it was something that did come up with the public. And I think it's important to qualify the idea with what the real constraints are. And I think between your contributions and I think what we've done, we've kind of outlined, how hard it is. But this is what it would look like if that development was achieved over time. So that's kind of the base of it. The next concept is not an either or. This is something that could happen tomorrow, I think. So let's go to the next one. And so this was a really interesting idea that came from several stakeholders. We discussed it first with Richard, and Troy and I were walking it tonight, and we did some updated exhibits. But essentially what this imagines is, the back side is almost the second front side. And several of the commercial buildings have created facades and entries that are on a quiet creek without any of the traffic noise impacts of Woodside Road. And it connects City Hall better. And it ties you all the way to Robert's Grocery. And gosh, that crosswalk might make sense if you get all the way over there. So this concept here basically hinges on, I think, a really important idea. And if you see that red line that's kind of halfway through the property, that would cut off the through traffic circulation to really quiet the street to vehicular traffic.
So that would cut it off to cars and trucks, but not pedestrians and not bikes.
Right.
Yeah.
And horses.
Horses, correct, correct. Those
So,
three get through.
so the idea is that if you eliminate the through traffic for vehicles, the only folks driving that shared street are the folks that happen to be parking into those spaces. So the cutoff point, though, would have to be accessible for emergency vehicles that would need to get through. So designing that gate carefully, and we're looking at it today, maybe the gate angles this way. There's some different ways to do it. So Troy, let's go to the next slide. So we took a photo in the upper left, and then this takes that same photo, but it overlays basically a strip of cobblestones. And it could be intricate or very minimal in its paving style and design. But it basically sends a message that through the texture, the rumble of the pavers, and potentially, very slight speed tables and other traffic slowing devices, that this zone is safe for a pedestrian, in a comfortable place for a pedestrian to connect to the trail network, or connect to Robert's Grocery, or to connect to the stores and shops at Gilbert's, and then on over to the Pioneer Hotel or City Hall. If you go to the next slide. If you take the paving all the way to the buildings, it can kind of be an even more complete environment. And there are examples of these shared streets in Washington State, California. There's places where this has been done. And then this is kind of all over Europe. But it's not without its challenges. It's really important that visual cues and communication to the cars to look out that pedestrians come first are crucial for safety. One of the challenges with the businesses on this side of the block is that the connectivity of the sidewalk has to navigate a lot of grade changes. So it's not ADA, there's steps, there's stairs. In some places you land on a sidewalk that's like a couple feet deep. So those things aren't really great for a promenade, but slowing the street way down and paving it with a special decorative paver could really transform the atmosphere and create a sense of place along this side. And maybe it would encourage more of the businesses to activate that side of their building in response. So Next slide. So, what are your additional comments to the concepts shown? Richard, go for it.
Yeah, so I made a couple of comments in the letter. If we could go back 2 slides, I would suggest that this slide be updated because the photo in the top left is not the actual conditions. It fails to show the Village Pub outdoor eating. And that's pretty important to show. You've got it on the next slide, but you don't have it on the first. So it's that consistency that's pretty important. On the first slide, 17, it looked to me when I looked at it and zoomed in, it looked like you were going diagonal parking as you got further down the drive lane there. I couldn't tell. It looked like you were contemplating only having
No.
parking on the south side. Again, I'm just saying there's value in clarity.
We updated so this photo we took tonight and updated it with the paving down the center. And we took this photo tonight and updated it with the paving down the center.
Okay, so these have changed since the ones
Yes.
we got. Okay.
In response to your comment, Richard.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've already made the comment in the letter, but that handicap stall, we've spent so much time and money creating that handicap stall for the village doctor, making certain it was to the nines perfect to allow patients with mobility issues access, ingress, and egress. So that parking along the backside there that we've got is really important to it. Thank you.
Okay.
Could I make a?
Yes, Steve.
Yeah, I love this idea. There was a time when the Book and Bean, a book and coffee shop was down there, and that back of those buildings at the lower level was much more active. And I'd love to see that restored. And it would also connect nicely with if we had a 12-foot multi-use coming up Woodside Road from the school, this would be a way that people could get away from traffic and walk through town.
Yep.
As far as Woodside Road goes, it seems to me that having parallel parking, really loses a lot of parking spots. I think that huge expanse of asphalt on Woodside Road is a great opportunity to put parking where we already have paving. If in the eastbound direction there was back-end diagonal parking, I think would be actually safer than parallel parking, and you'd get a lot more cars in. And I think it's really important to restore the parking on the north side because we still have a deficit of parking. And I'd hate to see a lot of parking interior. The parking lots, I think, are really destructive to pedestrian spaces.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. Yes, Sue.
I, for one, will miss the center turn lane, like into the post office, into the gas station. And I know you'll hate me, but I do like the cut through, especially if it's, a weekend. So when I'm coming down Mountain Home, I do sometimes, I'm going to the post office. So I'm going to go the back way instead of sit at at Whiskey Hill, wait at the stop sign to turn. I'm going to go the back way to the post office. But most of the time I'm using that cut through, it's because I'm really going to those particular places. I might leave the post office and go to the bank easier than going up Woodside Road. So. Oh, hate me because I'm going behind the buildings. I'm sorry. I'm using the cut through behind the buildings that you're now going to make a pedestrian friendly. But
well, the idea is that so Troy, can you go back to the map? So the orange zone represents where cars cut through from Whiskey Hill all the way to Robert's Grocery right now on the screen.
Correct.
So that's the path that cars take.
Right.
And so what this is saying is that, and what you're observing, Sue, is that we're blocking off the cut-through traffic in order to minimize the car presence, not eliminate it, but minimize it. But yeah, we would, in essence, lose your unofficial street that connects Whiskey Hill to Mountain Home.
Right. Because if it's the weekend and there's a lot of traffic or the people going to the beach, Woodside Road can really get busy. If I'm buzzing by the mail office or the post office, I'll just go the back way to the bank. So that's just a little, I
The-
mean.
Sadly, that's not a street, Sue.
Excuse me?
Sadly, that's not a street. You're going through someone's parking lot.
But it looks like a street. I would venture to say, I can't be the only one sitting here tonight that hasn't done that.
I will freely admit I do it too, but it's still not a street.
So I know what what the residents want for sure is a bigger variety of consumer-oriented retail, and these, I feel like we're losing track of that, right? That's a big thing that people want, is they want more, I can go to town here and get the things I need and shop. So to me, the big issue in all this is from the property owner's perspective, if we do either one of these, and I heard you say the first one's untenable, fine. But I don't think it's even almost not worth talking about unless you're like, yeah, I'd be happy to go add more on the shared street. I can imagine in my building doing whatever improvements I need to do to have a yogurt shop or a yoga studio or something that's open on that'll draw more pedestrians and draw more residents in, right? And so that, to me, that's like the core issue of this is I think it's cool, great idea, as long as the property owners are willing to build kind of some vibrancy and retail outlets there that'll make it a cool street for people to walk on. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point? That would be my thing. Yeah, but I'm just mean it's like a lot of people really want, that's the feedback we got, was the residents really want to be able to go here and have another restaurant option and have an ice cream shop and have a yoga studio and have some more stuff like that they could go visit. And so we can get that as part of this, awesome. Yeah, but the question would be like, can you reorient so there could be stores that face that, like those kind of shops that face it? And one building's already oriented the right way, but these guys in the middle would have to orient, back towards that street. Yeah. But that's why I bring it up, right? It's like, if we can get that, awesome, because it's cool, it's super cool idea. If we can't, then what's the point?
Richard, so some more comments. There's been a lot said here. So this, to me, this back lane fits in really well with what the town has done since termination of the Woodside Road, Whiskey Hill Road Parking Assessment District. And that is when buildings came forward to redevelop, there was a concerted effort to orient them towards the back. Right. So we, at our building at 2979, we opened up that lower level. So instead of the front that we had with Book and Bean, it was a much more open, light-filled space that attracted a concierge doctor who took part of the space and then took it all. So pretty big book of business over the last 20 years plus. Our other building, though, at Millstone, it's a solid masonry wall. We have no way to create space there. We'd have to exit, we'd have to tear down the building. So we added an architectural feature designed by Steve on the ramp when we closed off the ramp at the town's direction. But there's a building that has, a very tiny footprint, 1,200 square feet, with sitting on soil that would need to be excavated to orient it towards the rear. So I think with Village Pub, there's been a big change. So when the district was in throes, Village Pub was up on Woodside Road, an entrance restaurant overlooking Woodside Road. When that was sold, torn down and rebuilt, they put it downstairs, kitchen in the back, and then they had this opportunity during COVID to put seating out back. I don't think much else is going to change because the Gilberts built new on the east end, and they don't have the same topography that the other buildings have. And then the little building in between ours and the Village Pub is very, very tiny. And it's been done to the nines, more so than anything we've done. I mean, he really did a great job. He's not going to redo that again. I mean, it's about as oriented towards the rear as possible. So you have a limited number of buildings, limited footprint, and you've had this effort over 20 years when capital's been deployed to orient it towards the back.
So,
Final comment, though.
okay.
With retail leasing, drive counts count. You don't have drive counts in Woodside. You never will. You have demographics, you have income levels that support robust retail, but you don't have drive counts. And drive counts matter everywhere in leasing in the United States. And I've been at it for 45 years, so I've seen it done. It can be done. It won't be done here. You just don't have the population, the density, and the drive count.
Dan, the other agenda with this concept is if you cannot achieve the formalized pedestrian sidewalk that creates a continuity on Woodside Road, can we create continuity in an area that has less friction, in terms of cost? And so can you go to that first slide? Kind of the most minimal way to do this is just take the center section of asphalt and texture it, and try and take that texture all the way to where that, it could optionally stop at the red gate and you take the equestrian trail behind Gilbert's. Or if you wanted to extend this and it went around Gilbert's to tie into the post office and the uses there, that would be an option too to discuss. So, but I think, this ties to the museum, it ties to City Hall, it ties to the Village Pub. There's, a collection of some uses there. But the predominant agenda is really giving pedestrians like a nice place to walk. So, yes. Picking up the equestrian.
It would be in front of the Gilbert Center, Leighton.
The paving area would be. The shared street would go around the front of Gilbert Center potentially. But where the red line is drawn on the map is where folks can pick up the equestrian trail and walk safely to Roberts. And that's there today. So it picks up on some existing trail network. I'm saying, like, basically you could.
Leanne, could you use the microphone, please?
Fallen in to the dirt that had to be, it's very deep. And that's behind our whole building there.
Yeah.
And so it should be left alone because that's what it is.
Yeah,
And I don't think the neighbor behind us would enjoy the fact that all of a sudden a ton of cars or people were now walking down there.
We're not proposing any changes to that trail at all in this idea. This idea takes the concept of just changing the paving surface along where the cars drive, not where they park, but where they drive, to create a zone that pedestrians could walk along with slow traffic. So anyhow, just trying to clarify what we're showing.
It's clear as mud.
Two more quick comments.
Okay.
One is this concept really takes that back area to where it was prior to the town's approval of Gilbert Center. The town obligated Gilbert Center, the Gilberts, to remove that retaining wall that then blocked traffic from exiting Gilbert Center and heading east. So that was created at the direction of the town, but it didn't really matter at the time because there was a retaining wall behind the pub, and the retaining wall held traffic westbound at the pub, eastbound at that west side of the pub. That was removed when the town approved the pub and created this throughway. And yes, at times it may be infrequently used, but at times it is really heavily used. School times in particular see a lot of cut-through traffic, and it is sometimes high-speed stuff. So we added speed bumps, engineered speed bumps approved by the town public works department after review to slow things down. Some of those vehicles are pretty heavy. They take those speed bumps at speed. They don't care. So they fly over them. It is not pedestrian friendly, in my opinion, now. And so the idea is let's make it more pedestrian friendly and put cars back on the road where they should be.
So I'd like to say something about that. We had speed bumps on our whole road. They've been torn up 3 times by bicyclists. Wasn't you, was it? He wouldn't destroy property. He'd But anyway, that they've gotten all torn up every time. So we don't have them in there anymore. No more speed bumps. But nobody's speeding through Gilbert Center. Not if we caught them. If you're speeding there, did you look funny when I said that? But no. And behind, we're going to close that off because people are coming and they have no sight distance when they come from, let's say, up at the pub and coming down, they don't see around. And that's just how our building is built there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not a good deal in the back there. I don't think you can get as much joy out of that as you think.
So should I take that to mean you support closing that off, or you do not support?
I don't want to I just want to leave it alone the way it is. People know that people that walk there, if they're coming, where are they coming from to come down to the post office? We have the post office right there for anybody to get onto right away. We have parking spaces.
So here I would argue Leanne's got veto rights. So without Leanne in tow.
Well, why don't we take a vote on all the ideas and let's go from there. I think we've had some really good discussion, but let's just kind of lay out these ideas. We have a couple of ideas that are not necessarily contradictory. I think some of these are complementary, but let's just do a quick show of hands because I think Leanne's supportive of this idea ultimately. I think, but let's just start with the kind of the front side of Woodside Road. Do we support allowing basically develop properties to change their parking from the 90-degree to the on-street parallel parking? Do we support that? Yes or no? Not so much. All right. Oh, got one timid.
You lose too much part.
Well, you do.
Yeah, well, we're not losing parking all over, but actually, I was wondering, how do you suggest people get from the parking on the north side of Woodside Road across Woodside Road so they could, I mean, if we have all these cars there, because we're adding cars there, Steve.
I think.
How are people going to run across the road?
That's part of the traffic calming. I think there should be an additional 2 crosswalks here from the north side. The trees should be between the cars. It should be parallel on the north side and back in diagonal on the south side. If you are not going to get this retail use as intensely if we lose all this parking. I mean, I think we need it already. And the more parking we can keep on the street, the more we're going to encourage these retail uses.
Appreciate the comment. I just, I mean, we're supposed to be voting, but I guess my other comment was, I like the whole concept of enhancing the walking path, but realistically, what's left? I mean, there's the Village Pub. When we reoriented that so it faced the back, I was actually at the meeting. I remember very clearly somebody told me, if you're going to put the Village Pub downstairs, they're going to go bankrupt. Nobody's going to be down there. Well, it obviously worked, but that space is used up. The concierge doctor, that space is used up. Richard said that concrete wall behind that, the old Phillips 66 station, that's used up. So there aren't really too many reasons people are going to be walking down there. Now, I think your sketch is really beautiful. The watercolor was really nice, but who's going to walk down there? I mean, I don't know, Cottage. I don't even know what's in there, but it doesn't look like that's going to open up for retail. The thing next to the Village. What's your building there at the corner?
Perkins office.
Perkins office. I don't.
I think, as we've been pointed out, we're talking about long-term planning and none of this has to happen. And Richard's building that used to be a gas station, I think there's an incredible potential there to have, to keep the pedestrian pathway continuous on Woodside Road and to have a lot more building there on 2 levels, 3 levels. And I think in the long term, we've got to make it clear these things are possible. Forcing anybody to do it, making it possible really opens up opportunities.
Yeah,
We should have a long-term vision that makes more possible.
I think that's well said, Steve. I think just when we're here in this room today, right, we're looking at, it's this business. But if we look down in the future, things might happen. Someone, might buy a property, change over property. So this is a little bit less about, this exact business, I can't see it changing over, but it's a little bit taking a step into the world of what could happen in 10 years or 20 years. Though there are real constraints you guys are, helpfully expressing.
Should we just go to the last one? Or do you want to?
Yeah, maybe let's just finish out kind of the voting because I'm interested just to see where folks are in terms. So the first idea, I didn't see any hands really. How about adding?
Just one hand.
Yeah, just one hand. How about adding back parking onto Woodside Road?
Oh, on the north side?
Yeah, on the north side of Woodside Road.
At the cost of the center turn lane?
That would be the trade-off.
So we would object strongly to that, and it's highly likely if that went through, we'd file suit against Caltrans and the town, guaranteed. We lose access, westbound access to 2989, the Gilberts lose access from the Gilbert Center, we'd file suit.
Okay, we'll take that as a no vote. No, that's good feedback, but
Sorry, I agree with you, but I'm gonna object to your approach. He's asking for a vote. This is a public process with people who are selected to be here. The vote should be taken. I agree with your opinion, but we can't squash the vote. So he should take his vote.
Right, I agree with your comment, but I raised my hand for a while there while quite a bit of commentary was going back and forth over a number of topics which skipped the center drive lane, which has been made clear in the exhibits that if that goes, that's the only way to get parking on the north side. If that goes, we suffer damages and we won't sit back and allow that to happen, period. So.
Recognize that somebody has to say, or and then you could take the vote, okay? You would have it to say.
I'm not sure that it isn't possible to have left turn pockets and still have parking on the north side. I'm not sure, if we look at 11-foot lanes in both directions from Whiskey Hill Road to Kings Mountain Road with sharrows and having
you
shared, if you get rid of the bike lanes, you got another 10, another 16 feet.
Typically, how cities do it is they wipe out the parallel parking to make room for the turn lane for the length of 2 or 3 cars.
I think
so
we could
for
get
a turn pocket.
We could get the parking and get left turn pockets and get trees in the middle of the road. And I think with careful design, all of that's possible.
The challenge I think in the interim is all of the pull-in parking for the businesses along Woodside Road are going to need that turn lane. Only in the event that those properties redeveloped and we lost the need for that 90-degree pull-in parking off Woodside, that you wouldn't need the entire street to have that turn lane.
If you had left turn pocket, if you had back in diagonal parking and you had turn lane, 1 or 2 turn lanes, people could make a U-turn and back into the parking spots.
So let's do a vote really quick. We still have some bandwidth in this project left to, refine ideas, change exhibits, and work on things. But let's wrap up the vote because we still have another section to cover. So let's do a quick vote on the
shared street.
Share of hands for the north side parking.
Yeah.
And then we'll do shared street. Yeah. So real quick, if you're no on parking on the north side, in the event that there's that the turn pocket solution could be solved, raise your hand.
You've thoroughly confused us.
Yeah, it is confusing.
How about
we need to do an exhibit showing that you could add the parking on the north side with the turn lane.
Okay, well let's assume that the current trade-off is the loss of the center turn lane. Who's in favor of adding the parking on the north side, if that's the case? Losing the turn lane.
1.
Okay,
great.
Let's, as a team, make an experiment and see if there is any way to add both, to do turn pockets plus parallel parking. So we will take a look at that. Sounds like there's some interest in that. Okay, how about the shared street? How do we feel about the backside shared street concept? Who supports that?
It's implicit in that, cutting off, being able to drive continuously through.
Yeah. Great.
7, 8.
All right. And I think there's, we can also talk about Dry Creek Trail, improving that, but that's sort of a separate idea. I think more important are the bigger ideas. All right, great. That's good direction. And we'll take a closer look at the north, at the road and see what is possible. All right, let's move on to Area D, Whiskey Hill Road.
Great. Let's go to the next slide. So the predominant issues here is as you're coming from the freeway entering into town, a lot of folks are not slowing down. So if you're on Whiskey Hill Road trying to make a left turn into town, you're dealing with fairly high speed traffic traveling fast from the freeway and then traffic speeding up going towards the freeway. So we looked at a couple of concepts here to introduce kind of a way to control the intersection to improve its safety for both pedestrians and motorists. We talked about the concepts in general. At first, no change, crosswalk and flashers, three-way stop sign, mini roundabout. And so the CAC was split between a crosswalk with flashers and a three-way stop sign, and then a roundabout was not favored. Next slide. So this represents a three-way stop. And essentially what you're seeing on the north side of the intersection is an enter-only lane that goes into that property and accesses the parking in the back through the little tunnel it has. So in this situation here, we're creating a moment where traffic coming from the freeway stops, and it will slow traffic before it heads into town. And it would make it a lot safer and easier for folks to make a left onto onto Woodside Road coming from Whiskey Hill. And then let's go to the next slide. So this was the concept that there were a lot of concerns about roundabout safety. And so it does fit the site, a mini roundabout. And basically a mini roundabout has the motorist is really focused on one oncoming car at a time. So you're not worried about two-way traffic flow. You're really just worried about one-way traffic flow. And so there's basically less, different things to focus on. And there's a lot of research and data that shows that these modern roundabouts are actually a lot safer and have a lot less decision points than both standard intersections and older roundabout designs that weren't quite as pedestrian oriented. These both have pedestrian refuges, and then they neck down where the pedestrian crosses, so they have a very short crossing point. This does not require a stop sign coming into town, but it does slow traffic, and it does facilitate traffic from Whiskey Hill onto Woodside in both directions easier than it is today. It would also visually reduce the amount of pavement, increase the streetscape, and kind of create a nice gateway moment into the town. So we wanted to show these side by side so that we could kind of compare the two. One is pretty straightforward and traditional, and then the other has the roundabout concept. So let's go to discussion. Yes, Hassan.
Okay. Thank you for making me first. I have lots of opinions on this one. This was actually brought to us in circulation years ago. And there is actually a solution on the table that none of these, Caltrans has accepted it at the behest of Stacy Siebel, who advocated for it. They just haven't implemented it yet. I'll get to that in a second. My first question is that roundabout Caltrans truck legal?
So Alta designed this so that it was emergency vehicle and truck legal. And that center 56-foot fully mountable truck apron is set up so that a truck can go over that without an impact. It's really a graphic, kind of visual cue with a very slight rise in it. So you won't want to go over it, but going over it really isn't a problem at all.
But does that mean that, construction trucks, delivery trucks are intended to go over it because they can't make the regular turn?
It's not an obstacle for them. So if they have to take basically their radius can work by going over that without tipping their truck over or being an impediment.
But that means now you're going to get tire marks and noise and stuff. Okay. I'll leave that to Caltrans and to design. it seems to me like it may not fit. That's a technical thing. Someone has the information to figure that out. So I do not support the stop sign because again, more stop signs through this area, I don't think, well, again, it will help certain safety things. It will slow things down and we'll all be hating ourselves on that sunny Saturday when traffic is backed up to the wazoo. The solution we came up with was to add a two-way center turn lane right on your concept one, right where it says turn lane, but it faces in towards the business next to the gas station. If you're making a left from Whiskey Hill towards downtown Woodside, if you could pull into a center turn lane pocket, you only have to clear one direction of traffic at a time. So you make the left turn, you pause, now you're merging with traffic that you should have sight lines on, and you can see. The current challenge is you have traffic coming from two sides, up hills, you're checking both, I drove there today, and you get stuck.
Yeah.
The center turn lane, which currently you cannot enter from this direction, solves that problem with just paint, minimal changes, and it leaves the flow the same, and it doesn't have any of the, again, I like roundabouts, I don't know if it'll work here. So officially, Caltrans has accepted this. Lord knows if the person who accepted it is still there.
Yeah.
It's a different discussion. But to me, that was the most simple, elegant solution. Minimal changes, no stop signs, and it makes it easier and safer. I do support a crosswalk, potentially lit actually, because when people go to cross there, nobody sees them. So I think a flashing RFB crosswalk there is a great idea. The center turn lane to me was the simplest, most elegant idea. I just want to put it out there.
Great. Yeah, I think we should definitely add that.
Send you guys
Yeah.
messaging for it.
Great.
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yes, Julie.
Is that like when we're coming from the side streets onto El Camino in certain places? That's the same. Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Basically, you could pause in the middle of the street safely, not break a rule, and then wait till essentially clear the next lane. So you're doing one at a time.
That's how Woodside Road works east of 280.
It's like a merge lane, like a center merging lane, right?
I actually really like the three-way stop, but I think it should. I mean, it's an important place to slow people down coming into town. I think we want to set the tone as soon as people come in, but I think I would modify it so that Woodside Road, when you're westbound, kind of inflex to the left. So it gives you kind of an equal choice to drive down Woodside Road or Whiskey Hill Road. And I think that would help divert a lot of traffic away from town center, which I think is consistent with the other things we're trying to accomplish in this town center plan. And I think, a kind of equilateral three-way triangle here would be an easy intersection for people to navigate, but would give the clue that you're coming into town center and slow down.
Thank you, Steve. Carolyn.
I really like this option that's just been brought up, or it doesn't sound like it's new, but that you've raised tonight to have that turn lane in the other direction or bumping out so that you can safely come and pause. I do that almost every day on Alpine Road by Ladera Oaks and Ladera Bianchini's. The concern I see as a driver in that area is that sometimes the runway isn't long enough or it doesn't feel long enough because you have to accelerate from a stop and cut in front of cars, especially the ones coming from 280 into town. As you're coming out of the little pocket, it would feel like the runway would have to be long enough, and at least how it's shown there with the entry and exit to Chevron and this parking lot, I guess, or I guess that's the bank and Pioneer, but it doesn't seem like it's long enough. And that's just one concern, is that you need a little bit of time to be able to accelerate and compete with the cars coming at you from the left and then the ones coming from behind you to merge in safely. And I've found that the ones on Alpine by Bianchini's, Cuesta, those are really difficult a lot of times. And it makes everyone slam on their brakes thinking someone's about to pull into the traffic.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, any other comments?
I have one about the stop signs. We're all complaining because it's a long run coming up from down the hill and there are many trucks in the morning and I drive it a lot as well. But if we're stopped anyway, what about if there is a stop sign? It's not going to cause us any further delay. It's just going to pause us so someone else could get out and make the turn into the lane. I don't see it as another stall.
Thank you. Any other concepts or thoughts? Should we go on to the next slide? All right, show of hands. Which concept do you support? Hassan's concept, which you'll send to us and we'll get up there, which includes the merger turn lane. Do we want to see hands of support to what he described?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the winner.
Three-way stop. Couple. Three. Great. Okay. Mini roundabout. Okay.
Actually,
Couple.
I think it was brought up. I don't know if that roundabout, I mean, talk
enough
about
space.
semis going around that thing, the one that has to go when they're going eastbound. I don't think they could make that turn if you put that slide up. I mean, you ever drive a 60-foot long truck?
Or school bus.
It's got to go up Whiskey Hill Road and then back down Woodside Road. Did they really?
So Alta did the design of the roundabout. They do roundabouts all over the country. And we could ask them, it's a great question, and you won't be the only one who asks it. So we could ask them to add the truck movement simulation and how a semi or a horse trailer being pulled behind a truck would get around that. I think that's valid. Okay. Julie?
I mean, if I'm just looking at this in isolation, I like Hassan's idea about the pull-off, but I'm wondering if it would be worth, if we're considering one, maybe two roundabouts. If we were going to have two, I would think it would be more compelling because you get used to that pathway. And I know that Stanford did this, and I have to think they thought long and hard about it. And while I don't intuitively like them, I'm from Massachusetts, they're a nightmare there, but it works well when I'm on Stanford's campus, and I know they're careful about their pedestrians and their students. So I wonder if it's worth like a small case study to educate us in this and to understand if two roundabouts might be our most beneficial approach, even though we all viscerally feel negatively about them.
I did an overlay of one of the Stanford roundabouts on Kenyatta Woodside intersection, and it goes pretty much from their building to the corner of Roberts. It just isn't enough room for it. They're way bigger than what would fit in either of these locations.
So one element of this that we didn't talk about that I like is whether we did the version 0 or the version 1 is you've created a better corner here across from the bank and the Pioneer. Again, potentially a place for some public art or a gateway to the town. That could work with the Isan turn lane as well, too, right? So but the more of these things, they'll kind of define the town center and have the ability to put something cool there. Yeah, I like that. That's a nice idea.
Great. Thank you. Troy, anything else?
I think that's good feedback. And let's move on to our last area.
So this is our last area. I think it's a fairly short discussion. This is basically from Whiskey Hill out towards the freeway connecting to the east side. Let's go to the next slide. So initial feedback, members highlighted the need to improve access from East Woodside by upgrading pedestrian bike connections and facilities. Cars were voted as the highest mode priority, followed by bicycles. So in the concept 1 that we're showing here, you have a total width of 45 to 48 feet and bike lane on the side going out towards going east. And then inboard, we would have the bike lane plus a multi-use paved path in the shoulder. The challenge is that the street section transforms substantially between Whiskey Hill and the freeway itself. So there are varying cost implications that go with creating pedestrian connectivity along that. And then the second concept was to reopen the pedestrian tunnel under I-280. Is there another slide, Troy? I think that was just a short one. Yeah.
That's basically it.
So I think, those are kind of two ideas there's limited options in a way on this stretch of road for enhancing the facilities. But if there's interest in exploring the multi-use paved path, a closer look at all those shoulder conditions would determine, where does it get really expensive to expand that shoulder to accommodate that movement?
Are you thinking of that on the south or the north side of Woodside?
North, north, the north side, where the shoulder is wider.
On the north side, so the opposite of where, that's why they're talking about the tunnel that's over, yeah.
You could connect that up then with the tunnel
The
access.
path that's going from Alameda to 280 is on the south side, right?
On the other side of the freeway?
Yes, so so the town is getting ready to install a pathway on the south side of Woodside Road from the high school basically to 280.
Okay.
And so there would need to be a
Crossing,
do a crossing
yeah.
over and then switch to the north side, but just wanted to make sure you guys knew that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, thank you, Dan.
And I don't know that the tunnel's closed. I think it's open. But there's not great connectivity to it, but I think you can walk through there today.
Okay. Maybe it's a question of enhancement and sort of rehab.
The problem is it really doesn't go anywhere. Is the challenge with the tunnel is there's not good connectivity to Woodside Heights or to this new path that's getting fixed. So if it'd be a nice way to create connectivity from Woodside Heights to Town Center, or I'm sorry, Woodside Hills, with the addition of, there would need to be some new access because the only way to get through is almost all the way to Barclay Park. So there's not any cut through currently that could get you to, kind of the middle of Woodside Hills. That will be the challenge in this model.
So people aren't using it currently.
There's a limited use pedestrians. I don't think there's any equestrians anymore that use it, but it's very limited because it's hard to get to the tunnel from Woodside Hills. You can either do it through Barclay Park or there's a fenced off alleyway that's like a PG&E's access to it. It's hard to squeeze through.
And to come through Barclay Park, you have to go through the holes in the fence.
Yeah, so it's not great. It's a great
It's
idea.
not intuitive.
Love the idea of connectivity between Woods and the residents who would like connectivity under the freeway to Town Center. But I think it's very separate than this idea, which is think about a safe route to school for kids going from Town Center to Woodside High, right? Which you couldn't involve the tunnel.
They're completely independent
Yeah, it's
ideas.
two separate ideas.
I think it would be great if the shared use path could stay on the south side, but the road is right up against the bank there. It would be, if money weren't an object, you just move the road over 8 feet and put it on that side. But I think money probably is a huge object in this case. So we're going to need 2 crosswalks to.
People can cross.
Okay, great. All right. Any other comments on this before we? Yes, Sue.
For me, it would be helpful to see a bird's eye view of Woodside Road from the little store or Kings Mountain to Whiskey Hill, so I could see the turn lanes and, we've seen in segments, but see how everything continues together. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, we'll definitely get there as soon as we start piecing the different ideas together for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. That could be something in the final plan that really paints the picture of what the vision that we want to see for this whole area. I think the pieces will fit together a little better there. All right. Well, this is kind of all the ideas we put on the table tonight. You guys had some new ideas that we're going to add into the mix and a couple that we're going to kind of modify and generate new ideas. So really, really helpful feedback. Thank you for that. So I know we're a little over time, but we're just going to do a quick housing discussion and then we'll move to public comment and closing. So just quickly, I'll just use this, it's fine. So just quickly kind of pulling ourselves back over to housing. I know we had a lot of talk about transportation at this meeting and the last meeting, but also housing has been in our agenda. And so I think we're aware of some of the key issues is that there's a lot of constraints, and we were talking about some of them tonight about why properties may not develop or redevelop. We have small parcels, we have zoning, we have parking requirements, other restrictions. You have the ballot measures, which limit your building heights. So before we even talk about those purple boxes, we would need to talk about building heights and ballot measures. Adaptive reuse, not really currently allowed. Workforce housing is not really a thing. And as we all know, the housing, we're here in part largely because the housing element asked us to look at housing in the town center. And, we took the opportunity to look at parking and transportation as well. But originally, housing was sort of the genesis for this effort. And, we went out to the community in the first sort of phase, and there was a lot of split opinions. It's kind of down the middle on housing. So that's where we are today. So last time we met as a group, and we kind of ran out of time at the end to talk about housing. So we sent you guys home with a little homework and a survey. And so kind of just wanted to circle back on that and kind of report out the results. We asked, should housing be allowed in the town center? And overall, over 3/4 of you said yes for one reason or another. The biggest reason being the design of that housing being important, and that it's aligned with some of the needs, workforce needs and other needs that we were talking about. So just kind of putting that back out to the group, that was the consensus. Of course, there are some folks who are unsure, but that was kind of where we landed. And then specifically, we asked, okay, yes, housing. Well, what does that mean to you? And generally, most folks fell in the 2-story range being what felt right. A few folks said, keep it lower, and a few folks said keep it go higher to go 3 stories. But there was generally not interest in larger scale developments, and there was some other comments about how it's important that we'll need to provide parking for new housing. So that was the feedback we received. And now this chart is I'll just summarize it briefly, but I just wanted to kind of convey that as we've been talking here, a lot of these ideas are longer term concepts and policies that will ultimately result in something, but this plan itself does not build housing per se or build a new road per se. But we're going to go through this process. We'll have these meetings. We'll go through a CEQA process. We'll adopt the plan, which will contain policy statements. And then those could result in the first step being potential ballot measure to change some of the current ballot measures in place. That would be a prerequisite for certain types of housing development. There are also options that could proceed with just zoning action by staff or council that wouldn't necessarily require ballot measures, but you could have a ballot measure followed by a zoning change, and then that would result in either the private property owner choosing voluntarily of their own desire to redevelop under a new zoning regime, or in the case of if it's a public property like the Village Hill, the town would partner with the developer. But just to lay out kind of the steps here, that starts with policy, it goes potentially to the ballot box, then it goes to zoning changes, and then we see development itself. So we're a few steps removed from that. But with that, I just wanted to give ourselves a little bit more space and time to talk about housing. If there's any additional feedback that you particularly would like for us to convey to the council as we go next week, now is the time to share it with us. So I'll just open the floor there.
Yeah, so a bunch of comments. I think it would be wise as the town to focus particular attention on parcels the town controls, the town holds fee title to, whether that's Village Hill or it's the parcel adjoining Town Hall. I would prioritize those. I think those have the most potential, where the town staff has full power. No incentives are needed. The town could perhaps contribute some part or all of that land to a developer, allowing that developer to step in and presumably as a nonprofit, fund the build out of housing. It eliminates the third party. It eliminates the third party private property owner. I'm not saying it can't be done on private property, but again, town center is very, very small, relatively small, with a number of parcels that are extremely small. And today, we haven't focused on the bigger parcels owned by private property, presumably because they've gone through the same process others have gone through. They've already been built out. They're already occupied. There's likely going to be no change. So that tells me if I'm the town, it's wise to focus on those parcels where I have control. And in town center, there are two of them. Second is at the beginning of the meeting, Sage talked about policy, setting policy, and yet I don't see that on this final slide. So my idea would be, it may be wise to add something in here about policy. Maybe that's a separate line, a separate option 4, step 1. I don't know, but you may want to flush that all out. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so I haven't seen this. So the earlier ones, okay, council approves zoning changes. Okay, but I still don't see policy updates. I see zoning changes in option 3 and 4. So my idea would be to add a 5th option.
Sure.
Point. Final item, what's going to town council and when is it going? Does it require a staff report by Good City Company, a staff report by Sage, an overview by Sage, and when does that go out? When does the public see it?
Are you asking about next week's meeting?
Yeah.
Staff, do you want to, or do you want me to take that?
So the staff report will be worked on, I believe between Good City and Sage, we will have a combined staff report, and the agenda packet will go out no later than this Friday. And the meeting is on Tuesday, April 28th at 7 p.m.
Great, thanks.
I apologize if we've seen this in the past, but I think it's hard to say yes or no without having a sense of the magnitude. I can't remember how many units the town has to build, how many they have agreed upon in different places, whether those are still moving forward or not. Are we talking 5 or 100 units in town? I think that's all really important context because, yeah, maybe some 2-story buildings to have a few apartments is one thing, but, you know, it really changes depending on that order of magnitude. And when you get to some of the public spaces, I think that we also have to think about the trade-offs that we've been talking about in terms of keeping Woodside rustic and having gathering spaces and protecting our trails and our equestrian areas. I live close to Village Hill, and I know that all of the neighbors in that area and those around Mountain Home would feel, you know, really wronged in so many ways if there were to be development there, never mind what it would do to the character of our town to lose that area with the horses.
So quick add, I agree with that statement in full, and I think it ties back to the statement I made at the very first meeting. The town has the best affordable housing site available to it. It's at Kenyatta College. The state really needs to step in here and satisfy that requirement itself. Utilities are there, storm drains are there, sewers are there, water, electric, power. It's all set to go. You have all those engineering constraints. Again, technically possible, but difficult. You have it all in place there. So it almost seems to me like the best solution, perhaps in parallel, is a political solution behind closed doors with the state to trade something, for the state to step in and take that land and use it. It's gorgeous. Affordable housing up there would make so much sense, and change the requirement to accommodate a town like Woodside that is very unique with parcels that are predominantly built out, highly rural, hardly any commercial to its detriment. It relies on property taxes. Where's that housing going to go in sufficient numbers? This is an edict from on high at rates that make no sense in this town. They make no sense in Atherton either. It's crazy. There's an incentive, though, to work behind closed doors with the state to do something. I'd love to see you guys do something up there, state and town, design something great.
Great. Any other thoughts about town center housing?
So I liked the direction in our last meeting where this went. I felt like there was some consensus that said, yeah, well, you saw it in the numbers there, which was don't force anybody to do anything, but allow for appropriately designed denser housing in the town center corridor, which broadly would be from Haciendas to kind of down by Kings Mountain along Woodside Road, right? Over the next 25 years, if I'm a property owner and all of a sudden my land is worth 2 or 3 times as much because I can add, I can either keep it a single family home or add a little bit of density again in moderation. Nobody's talking about San Mateo or crazy big stuff. I felt like that was a pretty good compromise and would be, if I was a homeowner along Woodside Road, I'd kind of all of a sudden my land's worth 3 times more. I'd feel pretty good about it. And I discussed that with a bunch of residents, and people thought that made sense. The other thing that happened recently was a couple of council meetings ago. There were kind of we had a very full room of pitchforks and torches over this proposal to take Caltrans land and build high density housing on it off of Farm Hill. And so, about 40, I just think I want to make sure we're all sensitive to about 40% of the town's residents live in Woodside Hills and Woodside Heights east of 280, and they feel crammed down on, where all of the dense housing, they feel like it's all being stuck on them. And so the Kenyatta Road's, I think, far enough away. Maybe there's some more insulation, but those guys feel like, how come the rest of Woodside isn't taking on its fair share and doing some anywhere else? And so I just wanted to make sure you guys understood those feelings coming from 40% of our residents. They're like, it just seems silly to them. We wouldn't do a little or some in the town center corridor because it just, it's where it would be walkable to retail and walkable to the store and where you'd put town employees, all that kind of stuff. So that's the sentiment I get from our residents, those two things.
I think chiefly for housing that the town would be well served to look to, to the missing middle, as they say in planning for housing to allow people, much like Dan is saying, to allow people to do more on their houses, particularly if it's in good locations to transportation and utilities and whatnot. I think instead of trying to look for projects the town can build, except for maybe a few, if we change zoning to allow higher densities in the right locations and let people do that on a small scale, we're going to be much better served than institutional sized projects. I think there's some evidence that one-off projects with small numbers of units is actually cheaper to build than mega projects. It's just mega projects depend on public funding, but it's cheaper to build ADUs basically, or fourplexes for that matter.
I don't have much to add. I think Daniel said it very well. I mean, the impact has to be spread around. Now, I get Richard thinks that it's great to put it all at Kenyatta College unless you live next to Kenyatta College. And it's not necessarily, I know the people who live near Village Hill think that it's going to be an abortion to put something on Village Hill, but that load has to be spread throughout town. Now, I appreciate that, we've seen Village Hill vacant, or at least I've seen it vacant for 68 years. But things might need to change, and somebody might have to look at that. And I don't think you can pack them all into one person's district or one certain area in this town. I think it's got to be spread throughout. And like Steve Lubin says, maybe there's got to be more like a overall town zoning overlay. So right next to your house, somebody could put up a 4-unit, multifamily thing. It should be throughout town. I mean, we're seeing it with, actually, I guess you can have 4 ADUs in your main residence. We're already looking at 5. So, that's maybe the way it should go. But I don't think anything should be a sacred cow. I think, if it's Village Hill or it's this, parcel next to the museum or the gazebo. Somebody mentioned the gazebo that was going, I think, down in this valley here below the museum. But I think everybody's going to have to see some intense housing intensity, but it shouldn't be just pushed out to one area. So it's not, it's idiotic. But you're, now, actually, what the state wants is idiotic, which Richard pointed out. But I don't know, we are living in a state that maybe some things are idiotic. Okay, well, now back to on the slide of one of the choices was adaptive reuse. And actually you brought it up at one of the meetings that nobody came to you and said, well, how about if I wanted to open up the hotel and put housing up there or put something on top of Gilbert Center? So I think so.
Not under our watch.
But I think adaptive reuse of those areas in town center, I mean, and so it kind of goes against what Richard says. Nobody's going to want to modify their current structures, but maybe somebody here would. So, or as you were saying, Troy, we're looking at a plan that's got to last the next 50 years. So if the possibilities are there, it could make a big difference. So that's got to be decided now.
I would echo the remarks of the last few speakers about having the council seriously consider having a zoning overlay to allow individual property owners to develop a single family lot to something more intense, like a fourplex, something along those lines. It's probably also worth pointing out that unfortunately, when we start talking about multifamily housing, the reality is if you lots that are developed more intensely, implicit in that is they have to be very adjacent to a sewer line, and that really geographically limits what parts of Woodside that burden falls on. That just, unfortunately for Woodside, that's reality.
All right. Appreciate the feedback. Lots of good thoughts. I think we can take these different ideas and opinions and carry these forward faithfully to the council. And then we'll circle back with this group next time. Just for your information, there's been some talk about kind of financial feasibility and all that. We are doing, our team, some analysis of residential feasibility, what it would look like for a site to realistically develop with residential. So I think that will help a little bit provide some color with some of the questions Dan and Richard were talking about in terms of, is it really realistic? And we'll have a little bit more clarity on that when we come back. But I think for that now, unless there's any closing comments, we'll move to the public comment section. Julie?
And just a note for those online, if you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you when it's your turn to speak.
Thalia Lubin, is this word? Thalia Lubin. Sort of bits and pieces of comments. If we can do anything to slow or stop the through traffic in Woodside, I think that would alleviate a lot of problems. You could put in 4 stop signs as far as I'm concerned, and maybe it would go on ways that you can't cut through town when northbound 280 is backed up. We live off Kenyatta Road, and there's days where I can't even get onto Kenyatta Road. I did go to Jean Savary and asked her about this whole Waze situation. She says those are public roads. We can't really do anything to change the mapping and when the freeway shuts down. So that's one idea. Maybe we need to back out and look at a master plan and try to divert traffic Whiskey Hill, Sand Hill to Portola Road. So if you want to go to La Honda and you're coming through Woodside, that's going to be your best route because the rest of town is going to have too many narrow lanes and stop signs. So I'd like to kind of look at the bigger picture of this whole thing. Other idea, to Sue's point, I think if the back alley were turned into a more pleasant street, you would be okay to park there and walk to the bank from the post office maybe, so I think the concept is great. Another idea is Steve and I have visited a lot of revamped downtowns, and they have this back-in parking. Right now, all of us pull out of perpendicular parking when we back out. And I can tell you, when I'm at Roberts, if I'm on Mountain Home side, I back in because I have a little car and I can't see coming out if I'm backing out. If I could take all of you to one of these diagonal back-in parking situations that we've seen in some of these downtowns, I think you would all really like it. It really works, and it's much easier if you're heading this direction to back in at an angle, and then when you get in, you can see before you when you're going out. And finally, I want to say a big thank you to the consultants. I think they've done a great job. And as an architect, I hear some of your comments are like, they've already built it and look out. And I think what we're trying to do here is come out with a master plan that will last for a long time. There may be changes in ownership, different buildings, different situations. So I'd like to see us come out with what I call a conceptual master plan that we can refer to and implement incrementally. And as situations change, we can have more feedback. But I would appreciate all of your comments, but I'd like you to keep your minds open for other possibilities and how to feed off each other with your ideas so that we can make Woodside better, safer, prettier. Some of you may remember that Caltrans came through and widened from Haciendas to Roberts when 280 was going in. We had no choice about that. We have a choice about this, and we can all have input and make it better. So thank you.
Moving to the speakers online, Lee Prince.
Good evening. My name is Lee Prince. I'm a land use attorney representing Roberts. I want to thank everyone for the good discussion tonight regarding these transportation concepts. Some of the comments made this evening that led to the direction to relook at the Area B concepts are similar to the comments I will make on behalf of Roberts, the main property owner impacted by these proposals. Before I get to specific comments on Area B, I want to note that the objective to prioritize residents over visitors by limiting parking contradicts the priority to provide for resident amenities like outdoor dining that require more parking to be viable, both from a municipal code parking requirement perspective and from a financial feasibility perspective. Roberts is intimately familiar with the financial difficulties associated with the impact of limited parking in this commercial area of town. And from Robert's perspective, the concept proposals for Area B, rather than being an improvement, will place a burden on Roberts, which I heard the consultant say is not the goal of these concepts. Moving the concepts in Area B forward should be paused until Roberts and the town can dig into the issue of the size of the private parcel and the scope of the public right-of-way. Roberts has information that contradicts the depiction of the parcel, not including the full market property as it is generally understood. Roberts is unaware that the town owns any of this land. Until these issues are resolved, it is difficult to plan and understand what options may be reasonable or legally possible. With respect to parking, even if the number of parking spaces is retained, Roberts is opposed to moving the parking away from the store or across the street from the store, both from an operational and safety perspective, think customers carrying grocery bags, and from an economic perspective, as fewer people may patronize the market if they are concerned about finding parking and or crossing the street. Roberts is concerned that the parking, as these concepts propose it, will get used for other purposes, not for market parking, with no enforcement mechanism, which would further constrain the market's parking and negatively impact the store. Roberts is also concerned about programming for any adjacent park. This programming could impact availability of parking spaces for the market. A farmer's market will take away from Roberts' customer base. This happens every week at the Portola Valley store on Thursday when the town hosts the farmer's market. To answer the question presented earlier, Christine is not interested in these gathering spaces adjacent to the market. Perhaps this type of space could be moved consistent with Measure A near Town Hall. Trucks cannot trucks cannot get back on Woodside Road without the slip lane, which will impact the concept one. I would recommend that the town take a step back from these concepts and work one-on-one with Christine to develop a solution that would be amenable to the market and its operations. I really appreciate your time this evening. Thank you.
There are no other raised hands online.
My name's Bill Gilbert. I'm the other half. What I heard, a lot of ideas in that, but I support Christine Roberts and her concerns, and I would hope you folks work with her to get it resolved. Number one, I had bumps put in my easement going down the back here. They've been torn up by the vigilantes of the bicycles. I think we need permanent bumpers there. It's a town easement, and I haven't asked, but I am going to ask. And I think that'll mitigate the speed back there, which is very dangerous. I'm here every day when I'm in town, and they just speed. Certain people speed back there like 30, 40 miles an hour. It's unbelievable. So if the bumpers were permanent, asphalt like you have, I think that would mitigate that. And then on Mountain Home Road, where you exit our property down there, I don't know if you can do this, but if you can make some speed changes where they make them downgrade to 10 miles an hour, then that would help a lot. Because these guys, when they get off work, they just zip through there. Also at the stop sign down here at Roberts, they're waiting there like race cars. Some of these guys look at it at 5 o'clock. You can't get out of here. They're coming up. They come out the stop sign. They're coming 30, 40 miles an hour within a few feet. So either the enforcement of the sheriffs or some downgrading of the miles per hour. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
That was my husband, who was in the San Francisco Police Department for 30 years. And part of that time, you led the traffic stuff going on there. Yeah, okay, I know it was only 1 year because you were a wild man all the rest of the time. He's well known. Anyway, he's a legend in the San Francisco Police Department. But everything he just said is so true. I forgot to find out what's happening is it at the end of our parking lot before we go over to Christine's, to the left? What is that street? Is that Mountain Home Road? Okay. Is there any kind of a stop sign or anything there? Because we have no sight distance there. Anybody coming out of our parking lot there can't see who's coming at them because there's a bunch of trees or built wooden things, not from our property, but there. I don't know. Does anybody in the town know about that? When you come out of Mountain Home Road and then you're just about to hit back of Christine's restaurant,
Over the bridge.
pardon me? Yeah, when they come over the bridge, there's no sight distance coming out of our place at all. So I don't know what you can do there, but
Yeah,
I'm surprised
that
there
can be
hasn't
part
been
of that.
death.
We talked about maybe a crosswalk there or some other. I think it'll depend on the.
Crosswalk because there's no sight distance for.
Well, right. Okay, maybe it's a crosswalk with a stop sign or a flasher. I think it could tie into our conversation with Christine, and I think we can take that into under advisement as we move forward. So
Maybe Louis can confirm this, but I've heard that the town is looking at replacing the bridge there on Dry Creek approaching Roberts. If that were moved, further east, and it would give a lot more room for that. It would be an opportunity to straighten that whole situation out.
Yeah, Steve is correct. That project, the bridge project, Mountain Road Bridge over Dry Creek, it is on the current draft CIP that's on our proposed CIP. So that's something that the town would like to look at, doing something with the bridge itself. In terms of Leanne's question about signage, I think the town can definitely take a look at that. Maybe through circulation committee, we can evaluate the signage over there.
We have another raised hand online. Christine Roberts, you may speak.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. Sorry I couldn't be there in person this evening, but I did catch most of the comments. And there were some interesting ideas presented. I think my takeaway from especially my part of the project, which turned out to be a lot larger. When I joined the committee, I had no idea that the idea was to take away parking from my business. I mean, I'm absolutely kind of stunned that this was presented and seems to be okay with the majority of people to include crosswalks and stuff. So while I agree there are some issues with the intersection and a parking space on the corner and people back out, that row of parking is just essential for my business. To move it anywhere else would be, it wouldn't be acceptable to me. And to put in the backwards 90-degree angle or whatever that parking is, we would lose at least 3 spots. It would take out the palm tree that's been there for almost 100 years. So I look forward to having more conversations about this. But this just was not what I expected to come out of this committee or this project. So, I mean, that's about all I have to say at this point.
I have a quick question. Other raised hands online.
All right. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for participating, and we'll look forward to continued conversations with you. So with that, did I hear a question? Yeah.
I'm just wondering, there was no mention we had been discussing outdoor dining options at our last meeting. Is that something that's going to be carried through and discussed?
Yeah, great question. So I'll go ahead and put up my final couple of slides here because tonight we were really laser focused on transportation. But last time we talked about parking, public space, transportation, and housing and land use all at once. So what we have on our docket is, as you know, we have our meeting next Tuesday, a week from tonight with council, where we'll give them really the feedback from this group, from the 3 meetings with this group, everything we've heard and everything we heard from the community in our surveys and our pop-ups. As I said, we'll be doing some residential financial feasibility analysis. After this council meeting, we'll really launch into the next phase of engagement. Our survey will be open in May. At the next meeting with this group, we'll come back to review the results of that community engagement, but also to circle back on some of the other topics like public space and housing that we just didn't get to tonight. And then the next meeting with the council will be to really confirm what we're going to study for CEQA, what's our CEQA approach and our scenarios, and then that will kick off the EIR. And then there'll be another final meeting with this group as we're kind of putting together the final plan to kind of look at it as a group, the policy direction and the concepts, but that will come later. in this year. So yeah, just putting this up again. Right now, we have council engagement, another meeting with this group, and then we'll go into environmental review. So we probably won't meet with folks here for a couple months, but we invite you to come to the council meeting next week and share your ideas, but we will do our best to convey the sentiments of this group and the concerns, comments, feedback from this group to council next week. So with that, yeah, one quick final.
Follow up on the last comment. Where are we with outdoor dining? And I think that may have something to do with a lawsuit that the town is currently working with, and maybe we could find out where that is right now, because the parking that was kind of approved by the council and by the town got kind of turned around at the last minute. So where I think that's holding up the outdoor dining is certainly at Bucks and the Village Bakery.
So the hearing on that was concluded a couple of months ago. The judge asked for some additional briefing, which has all been turned in. And we are all just awaiting her decision at this point, which I assume we will get within the next 30 to 60 days at the outside.
And I just want to again thank everybody for coming. And just to reiterate again, we're looking for this. This is a process to create a long-range planning document. It will guide the town with priorities and different programs to apply. So things like outdoor dining and parking standards, and whether there's flexibility for housing of adaptive reuse, or apartments upstairs, or different things like that. Those are all, again, these are going to be things that are policy driven. So the final document will tell us if we want to explore these things further, and any zoning changes that come with expanding, making more flexibility for outdoor dining, for different types of uses, maybe removing some of the red tape we talked about in some of our earlier meetings. I always use the example, our code says you need a conditional use permit for an ice cream store. And so, the goal will be coming out of this document to then set priorities where we'll start to get down into more of the details on these specific issues. And every zoning code change, and a lot of these items will be before the public for refined comments and implementation at that point. So again, thank you for coming, and we look forward to kind of creating this policy document together that looks forward for the next 10, 20 or more years.
Thank you, Sage. And if you have comments on your forms you want to turn in to us, go ahead and hand those back to us. But appreciate all the comments and conversation today. Thanks, all.